When a billionaire's 6-year-old daughter knelt in the snow to offer cookies to a homeless stranger, she had no idea she was about to destroy her father's carefully controlled world and rebuild it into something he never knew he needed. This is the story of three broken people who found each other on the coldest night of the year, when kindness became rebellion and love became survival. If you're watching from your city right now, drop a comment below and hit that like button. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. The December cold bit hard that night. Not the romantic kind of cold you see in holiday movies, where snowflakes drift gently past glowing windows while families laugh inside. This was the kind that crept through fabric and skin, settling into bones, making every breath hurt. The kind that reminded you exactly how fragile you were. Claire Bennett sat motionless at the bus stop on 5th and Morrison, her bare feet tucked beneath the thin cream dress she'd been wearing for 3 days. 30 years old, college educated, formerly employed, currently invisible. The fluorescent light above her flickered and buzzed, casting strange shadows across the empty bench. She'd stopped checking the bus schedule 2 weeks ago. No money meant no fare, and no fare meant the schedule didn't matter. She just sat here because it was lit, because it felt safer than the complete darkness of the alley behind the Chinese restaurant where she'd slept the night before. Her stomach cramped. When was the last time she'd eaten? Yesterday morning, maybe? Half a bagel someone had thrown away outside the coffee shop. Still wrapped in wax paper, barely touched. She'd told herself that made it okay, made it less humiliating. That logic stopped working around the third or fourth discarded meal. The wind picked up, and Claire pulled her arms tighter around herself. The dress, cream-colored, knee-length, the kind you wore to job interviews back when you had a life, offered about as much protection as tissue paper. She'd sold her coat 4 weeks ago for $40. $40 that had gone to exactly nothing she could remember now. Maybe food, maybe not. It all blurred together. A black SUV rolled past, slowing slightly. Claire didn't look up. She'd learned that trick early. Eye contact invited conversation, and conversation invited questions, and questions led to police, and police led to shelters that were full, or programs that had wait lists, or social workers who meant well but couldn't actually fix anything. Easier to become furniture, easier to disappear. The SUV kept moving. Claire exhaled, watching her breath form small clouds in front of her face. Somewhere across the street, a restaurant was closing up for the night. She could smell bread, garlic, butter. Her stomach twisted again, angry and empty. She used to bake bread. The thought arrived without permission, sharp and unwelcome. Sunday mornings in her old apartment before everything fell apart. Flour on her hands, her mother sitting at the kitchen table with tea. Still well enough to smile. Still months away from the diagnosis that would eat through Claire's savings like acid. Stop. She pressed her palms against her eyes. Remembering made it worse. Remembering reminded her of the exact distance she'd fallen. And falling wasn't the right word because falling implied suddenness, an accident. This had been slow. A series of tiny surrenders. The apartment. The car. The phone. The last pair of shoes. "Excuse me?" The voice was small, high-pitched. Claire's hands dropped. A little girl stood 3 feet away, maybe 6 years old, wearing a puffy pink coat and gray knitted cap with a pom-pom on top. Her cheeks were red from the cold, her dark eyes wide and serious. She held a small paper bag in both hands like an offering. "You look really cold," the girl said matter-of-factly. Claire's throat tightened. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. The girl stepped closer, completely unafraid, and held out the bag. "These are still warm. We just got them from the bakery across the street. I asked my daddy if you could have some." Behind her, standing near the SUV, Claire had noticed earlier, was a man. Tall, dark coat. He wasn't moving, wasn't approaching, just watching his daughter with an expression Claire couldn't read from this distance. Not angry, not impatient, just watchful. The little girl shook the bag slightly. "They're chocolate chip. Do you like chocolate chip?" Claire's hands were shaking. Not from the cold anymore. From something else, something bigger and more frightening than hypothermia. Someone was seeing her. Someone was acknowledging she existed. Her voice came out like gravel. "I can't. Why not?" The girl tilted her head, genuinely confused. Because I don't deserve it, Claire thought. Because I'm supposed to be invisible. Because accepting kindness from a child feels like admitting I've actually become this person, this stranger sitting barefoot at a bus stop in December. But she was so hungry. Please? The little girl added, and there was something in her voice, not pity exactly, more like simple human recognition, like Claire was just another person who might enjoy warm cookies. Claire's hand moved before her brain caught up. She reached out, took the bag, felt the warmth of it against her frozen fingers. Thank you, she whispered. The little girl beamed. You're welcome. I'm Sophie. That's my daddy. She turned and pointed at the man, who raised one hand in a slight wave. What's your name? Claire. That's pretty. How come you're sitting out here? It's really cold. From the SUV, the man called out, Sophie, honey, let's not... I don't have anywhere else to go, Claire said quietly, surprising herself with the truth. Sophie's smile faded, not disappearing exactly, but transforming into something more thoughtful. She looked back at her father, then at Claire, then at the bus stop bench with its chipped paint and broken heating vent. Do you have a house? Sophie asked. Not right now. Do you have food? Sometimes. Do you have... Sophie paused, searching for words. Do you have anybody? That question landed differently than the others. Claire felt it settle somewhere behind her ribs, heavy and true. She shook her head. Sophie's face crumpled with concentration, like she was working through a complicated math problem. Then she turned around and marched back to her father with purpose, her small boots crunching through the thin layer of snow on the sidewalk. Claire watched them talk. The man bent down to Sophie's level, listening intently as his daughter gestured back toward the bus stop, her hands moving emphatically. He shook his head once. Sophie kept talking. He said something Claire couldn't hear. Sophie put her hands on her hips, actually put her hands on her hips like a tiny, determined lawyer, and said something that made the man's shoulders sag slightly. He looked at Claire, really looked at her for the first time. Not the quick assessing glance people gave homeless folks to determine threat level. Not the uncomfortable darting look that said, I see you, but I'm pretending I don't. He actually looked at her like she was a person he was trying to understand. Claire looked away first. She opened the paper bag with trembling fingers. 3 cookies, still warm, chocolate chips melting slightly. The smell alone almost made her cry. She took a bite, then another, then forced herself to slow down because her stomach would rebel if she ate too fast and she couldn't afford to waste this. Claire, she jerked her head up. The man was walking toward her now, Sophie at his side. Up close, he was younger than Claire had first thought. Early 30s, maybe? Expensive coat, but wearing it like he forgot it cost more than most people's rent. Dark hair, slightly messy. Eyes that looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the late hour. My name is Ethan Cole, he said. His voice was quiet, careful. This is my daughter, Sophie. You've met. Claire nodded, unable to speak around the cookie in her mouth. Ethan hesitated, and in that hesitation, Claire saw something unexpected. He was uncomfortable. Not disgusted, not afraid. Uncomfortable. Like he didn't know what he was doing any more than she did. Sophie has informed me, he said slowly, with a small glance at his daughter, that you're spending the night out here, and that this is, quote, not acceptable. Sophie nodded firmly. Claire swallowed hard. I don't need anything. The cookies they were more than enough. Thank you. When did you last have a real meal? Ethan asked. The question was so direct, so unapologetic, that Claire actually flinched. That's not 3 days? 4? It doesn't matter. It does, actually. He glanced at her bare feet, and she saw something shift in his expression. Not pity. Something harder. Anger, maybe, but not at her. There's a diner 2 blocks from here. Open all night. We're going to buy you dinner. No. The word came out sharper than Claire intended. Thank you, but no. I'm fine. I appreciate the cookies, really, but I don't need... Claire. Sophie stepped forward, her small face serious. My mommy died last year. The non sequitur stopped Claire cold. Sophie, honey, Ethan started. She got sick and died, Sophie continued. And Daddy said that when people are hurting, other people are supposed to help. That's what Mommy would want. Right, Daddy? Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Right. Sophie looked at Claire with devastating earnestness. Are you hurting? Claire's hands tightened around the paper bag. Every instinct she'd developed over the past 6 months screamed at her to shut this down, to refuse, to protect herself from the inevitable moment when this charity turned into obligation or expectation or disappointment. But she was so tired. And this little girl had just told her about losing her mother, like it was a reason to help, not a reason to stop caring. Yes, Claire heard herself say, I'm hurting. Sophie reached out and took her hand. Her small fingers were warm. Then we should help. Come on. The diner smelled like coffee and grease and everything Claire remembered about normal life. Ethan had offered the SUV, but Claire refused, partly because the thought of sitting in that expensive vehicle with her filthy dress and dirty feet felt impossible, partly because she needed the 2-block walk to figure out how to exist in this situation. So they walked, Sophie chattering between them, Ethan quiet and watchful. Now Claire sat in a cracked vinyl booth, staring at a laminated menu she couldn't focus on. Across from her, Ethan had his arm around Sophie, who was yawning despite her earlier enthusiasm. The late hour was catching up with her. Order whatever you want, Ethan said quietly. Claire's eyes tracked down the prices. Even the cheapest items, $8.99 for soup and sandwich, felt like a fortune. Maybe just coffee. Claire. He leaned forward slightly. I run a tech company worth approximately $3 billion. Order actual food. The number was so absurd, so incomprehensible, that Claire actually laughed. It came out bitter and broken. Then what are you doing here? People like you don't... She stopped herself. Don't what? Don't notice people like me. Something painful crossed his face. I almost didn't. Sophie made me stop. I saw her first, Sophie mumbled, fighting sleep. She looked sad. A waitress appeared, older woman, kind eyes, name tag reading Donna. She looked at Claire without judgment, which was its own small miracle. What can I get you, honey? Claire's throat felt tight. Pancakes, please, and eggs, scrambled, and bacon. Coffee. Please, Donna smiled. You got it. And for you two? Ethan ordered coffee. Sophie wanted hot chocolate, but fell asleep against her father's shoulder before it arrived. Donna brought Claire's food without comment, and when she set down the plate, golden pancakes stacked high, eggs still steaming, bacon crispy and perfect. Claire had to look away and blink hard. Thank you, she managed. Take your time, hun. Ethan said nothing while Claire ate. Didn't watch her, didn't make small talk, just drank his coffee and absently stroked Sophie's hair while his daughter slept. The silence should have been awkward, but somehow wasn't. It felt almost respectful. Claire made herself eat slowly despite her body's screaming desire to inhale everything. Pancakes first, then eggs, then bacon, crispy and salty, and so good it hurt. Halfway through, she had to stop and just breathe, overwhelmed by the simple fact of being full. You okay? Ethan asked quietly. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Where were you staying before the bus stop? Different places. Wherever. For how long? 6 months. Maybe 7. She pushed eggs around her plate. I lost count. What happened? Claire looked up sharply. Does it matter? No, he said simply. But you're clearly not someone who chose this. So I'm asking, not because I'm judging, because I'm trying to understand. She could have lied, should have lied. But something about sitting in this warm diner at midnight with a strange man and his sleeping daughter made the truth feel safer than it had in months. My mom got sick, Claire said slowly. Cancer. Stage 4. No insurance that covered what she needed. I was working tech support, paying my own rent, trying to save money for grad school. Then she got the diagnosis and everything just unraveled. Ethan listened without interrupting. I took time off work to care for her. Lost the job. Burned through my savings paying for treatments that didn't work. She died anyway, 8 months after the diagnosis, and I had nothing left. No job, no savings, no apartment. Tried to find work, but gaps in your resume make people ask questions, and once they hear caregiver burnout, they stop calling back. She wiped her eyes roughly. Sorry, you didn't ask for my life story. I did, actually. Why? Ethan was quiet for a moment, looking at his sleeping daughter. Because Sophie was right. You looked sad. And I've learned that sad people usually have reasons. Claire finished her coffee. It had gone lukewarm, but she didn't care. Your turn. Why does a billionaire stop at a bus stop at midnight? Sophie wanted cookies. We can't say no to her. He smiled slightly. Ever since her mother died, I've had a hard time denying her anything that makes her happy. Probably terrible parenting. Sounds human. I'm not sure I've been particularly human lately. He paused, searching for words. Absent. Physically present, but emotionally checked out. Working constantly because if I stop working, I have to think about the fact that my daughter is growing up in a house that feels like a museum. She seems happy. She pretends well, takes after her mother that way. Ethan shifted slightly, careful not to wake Sophie. Her name was Anna. We met in college. She was an artist, painter, sculptor, whatever caught her interest. She could make something beautiful out of anything, and then a drunk driver ran a red light, and she was just gone. 18 months ago. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Sorry doesn't help. He said it without bitterness, just stating fact. What helps is watching my daughter teach me how to be a human being again. Like tonight. I would have driven past that bus stop without a second thought. Sophie made me see you. Claire traced patterns in the condensation on her water glass. What happens now? Now I drive you both home, put Sophie to bed, and spend several hours not sleeping while I pretend to work. He paused. And I try to figure out what to do about you. There's nothing to do about me. I'm not your problem. You're sitting barefoot in December. That makes you someone's problem. Not yours. Claire. He waited until she met his eyes. It's 11:30 at night, below freezing, and getting colder. The shelters are full this time of year. I know because my company donates to most of them. Where exactly are you planning to sleep tonight? She didn't answer. That's what I thought. Ethan pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. I'm texting my security detail. They're going to arrange a hotel room for you. 1 night, paid in full, no strings attached. Warm bed, shower, safety. I can't accept that. Why not? Because I don't know you. Because this feels like charity. Because you've been surviving by yourself for months, and accepting help feels dangerous. Ethan finished. I understand. But here's the thing. Refusing help when you need it isn't strength. It's just another way to disappear. His words hit harder than Claire expected. She looked down at her empty plate, her filthy hands, the dress that had once been cream-colored and was now gray with dirt and wear. 1 night, she said finally. That's it. 1 night, Ethan agreed. What? The hotel was nicer than anywhere Claire had slept in recent memory. Not fancy. Ethan had deliberately chosen something mid-range, she suspected, so she wouldn't feel overwhelmed. But clean, safe, warm. Ethan's driver had dropped her off with a room key and a paper bag containing toiletries, fresh clothes in approximately her size, and a prepaid credit card with $200 loaded onto it. Mr. Cole said no strings, the driver had explained. Just basics. Now Claire stood in the shower, letting water, actual hot water, run over her skin for the first time in weeks. She watched dirt and grime swirl down the drain, watched her feet turn from black to pink, washed her hair 3 times with the small shampoo bottles, stood there until the water started to cool, unwilling to leave this moment of simple, profound luxury. When she finally got out, wrapped in a towel that smelled like detergent and normalcy, she caught her reflection in the foggy mirror. She looked terrible, thin, hollow-eyed, skin red and raw from exposure, but clean. For the first time in so long, clean. The clothes Ethan had sent were simple. Jeans, soft sweater, socks, basic undergarments still in packaging. Everything fit well enough. She put them on slowly, feeling the fabric against her skin like a reminder of who she used to be. The bed was massive. White sheets, 2 pillows. Claire sat on the edge, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. Bone-deep, soul-crushing tired. Not just from tonight, but from months of survival, of constant vigilance, of sleeping with one eye open in places that weren't safe. She lay down, pulled the blanket up to her chin, and cried. Not sad crying, not really. Something else. Relief, maybe. Or grief for the person she'd been before everything fell apart. Or gratitude for a little girl who'd seen her when everyone else looked away. Eventually, the crying stopped. Claire stared at the ceiling, listening to the heater's gentle hum, feeling warm for the first time in recent memory. Tomorrow she'd go back to the bus stop, back to survival, back to being invisible. But tonight, just for tonight, she was allowed to be human again. Claire woke to sunlight streaming through the hotel curtains. For a few confused seconds, she didn't know where she was. Then memory returned. The bus stop, Sophie, Ethan, pancakes, this room, this temporary sanctuary. She checked the clock. 9:47 a.m. She'd slept 11 hours. Her body ached in unfamiliar ways, muscles finally allowed to relax after months of tension. Claire sat up slowly, half expecting last night to have been a dream. But no. There were the clothes she'd worn, neatly folded on the chair, the toiletries in the bathroom, the prepaid card on the nightstand. Real. It had all been real. A knock at the door made her jump. Claire approached carefully, checked the peephole. A hotel employee stood outside with a covered tray. "Breakfast delivery for room 247, the young man called through the door. "I didn't order anything." "Compliments of Mr. Cole. He said you might be hungry." Claire opened the door, accepted the tray in a daze. Coffee, orange juice, fresh fruit, scrambled eggs and toast. A small note in neat handwriting. "Take your time. Checkout isn't until noon." She ate slowly, sitting by the window watching the city move below. Normal people doing normal things, going to work, meeting friends, living lives that made sense. She used to be one of them. The thought didn't sting quite as much as it usually did. Maybe because her stomach was full. Maybe because she'd slept in an actual bed. Or maybe because for the first time in months, someone had treated her like a human being without expecting anything in return. At 11:30, Claire gathered her things, which consisted of the clothes on her back and the toiletries from last night. She left the room key at the front desk, ignored the clerk's sympathetic smile, and walked out into the cold December morning. The bus stop was 3 blocks away. Her familiar spot. She could go back, resume the routine of survival, pretend last night had been a strange and beautiful aberration. Instead, she found herself standing on the sidewalk, holding the prepaid card, staring at it like it might contain answers. $200. She could make that last week's if she was careful. Food. Maybe a few nights in a cheap motel. Socks. She desperately needed socks. Or, the thought arrived quietly, dangerously. Or she could use it to be human for a little while longer. Real food. A gym membership for shower access. Maybe, and this felt impossibly ambitious, start looking for work again. Actual work, not just day labor or begging. Her phone had been gone for months, sold when she still believed having money was more important than staying connected. But libraries had computers. She could make a resume, send emails, try. It would probably fail. Probably end with her right back at that bus stop, colder and more disappointed than before. But Sophie's voice echoed in her head. "Are you hurting?" And Ethan's. "Refusing help isn't strength. It's just another way to disappear." Claire looked up at the winter sky, gray and heavy with unshed snow. "Okay," she said quietly to no one. "One more try." The library was warm and blessedly anonymous. Claire found a computer in the back corner, away from the main flow of traffic, and stared at the blank screen for a full minute before touching the keyboard. It had been so long since she'd done this, since she'd tried to be anything other than invisible. She started with email, created a new address, then opened a job search site and began scrolling through listings. Data entry clerk, $15 per hour. Must have reliable transportation. Customer service representative, previous experience required. Administrative assistant, college degree preferred. Each listing felt like a small door slamming shut. No transportation, no recent experience, a degree from 6 years ago that might as well have been from another lifetime. Claire's finger hovered over the trackpad, ready to close the browser and give up. Then she noticed a listing at the bottom of the page. Archive assistant, Cole Foundation. Part-time position. Organizational skills required. Will train the right candidate. No degree necessary. Cole Foundation. Ethan Cole's Foundation. Claire's first instinct was to scroll past. Accepting help from him once was charity. Applying for a job at his organization felt like... She didn't know what it felt like. Desperation, maybe. Or opportunism. But then again, what did she have to lose? She clicked the listing, read through the description. Filing, data organization, basic computer skills, 20 hours per week, $18 per hour. She could do that. She'd done similar work before, back when she had a life. Before she could talk herself out of it, Claire opened a document and started writing a resume. It was bare bones, employment gap explained simply as family caregiver, but honest. She attached it to an email, wrote a brief cover letter, and hit send before her courage failed. The email whooshed away into the void. Claire sat back, exhaled slowly. Either it would lead somewhere or it wouldn't. Either Ethan would see it and think she was taking advantage, or he wouldn't see it at all, and some HR person would delete it without a second glance. Nothing to do now, but wait. She spent the rest of the afternoon researching shelters with open beds, making a plan for the next few nights. The $200 could stretch further if she was strategic. Hostels were cheaper than hotels. Some churches offered free meals. By the time the library closed at 6, Claire had a rough roadmap for the next week. It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd had yesterday. She walked back toward the bus stop as evening fell, watching Christmas lights flicker to life in shop windows. The city looked almost beautiful like this, dressed up in holiday decorations, hiding its sharp edges under strings of colored bulbs. Her stomach growled. She'd eaten the hotel breakfast, but that had been hours ago. Claire pulled out the prepaid card, did quick math in her head. $5 for dinner. She could afford $5. The Chinese restaurant near her usual bus stop had a special, dumplings and rice for $4.50. Claire ordered at the counter, ate standing up outside because sitting inside felt too presumptuous, and tried not to think about how much colder it was getting. Her phone buzzed, except she didn't have a phone. Claire frowned, checked her pockets. Nothing. The buzzing continued. Then she realized it was coming from the paper bag Ethan's driver had given her last night. The one with the toiletries and clothes. She dug through it, found a simple flip phone at the bottom. Basic model, prepaid minutes. A sticky note attached, in case of emergency. My number is programmed in. E. Claire stared at it for a long moment. Then she flipped it open. One new text message from a number labeled Ethan Cole. Sophie asked about you at breakfast. Wanted to make sure you were okay. No pressure to respond. Just wanted you to know someone's thinking about you. Claire's hand shook slightly. She typed back slowly, unused to the old-style keypad. I'm okay. Thank you for everything. The response came within seconds. Good. The hotel room is paid through tomorrow night if you need it. Same room number. I can't accept that. You can. You don't have to, but the option exists. Claire looked at the bus stop bench, then at the phone, then at the darkening sky. 2 choices. Pride or survival. She'd chosen pride for months, and it had gotten her nowhere. Thank you, she typed. I'll take it. Smart decision. Stay warm, Claire. She closed the phone, tucked it carefully into her pocket. The Chinese food sat heavy and warm in her stomach. The prepaid card was still in her other pocket, and tomorrow night she'd have another warm bed. It wasn't permanent. It wasn't a solution. But it was something. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, something felt like enough. 3 days passed in a strange, suspended reality. Claire stayed in the hotel room Ethan paid for, venturing out during the day to check her email at the library, apply for other jobs, and figure out her next steps. The Cole Foundation position hadn't responded. Neither had the dozen other applications she'd submitted. She tried not to let it crush her. Ethan texted occasionally. Never intrusive, just small check-ins. How are you doing? Sophie made cookies today. She insisted I tell you. Weather's getting worse. Stay inside if you can. Claire responded briefly, carefully. She still wasn't sure what this was. Kindness without expectation, or the prelude to something she'd eventually owe. Her experience over the past months had taught her that generosity usually came with strings, even when people swore it didn't. On the 4th morning, her email pinged with a new message. From hr@colefoundation.org. Subject, Archive Assistant position. Dear Ms. Bennett, thank you for your application for the Archive Assistant position. We would like to invite you for an interview this Friday at 10 a.m. Please respond to confirm your availability. Best regards, Margaret Chen, HR Director, Cole Foundation. Claire read it 3 times. An interview. An actual interview. She hit reply so fast she almost made a typo. I'll be there. Thank you. Then she sat back and tried to breathe normally. This was real. This was a chance. And she had absolutely nothing to wear to an interview. Friday arrived cold and clear. Claire stood outside the Cole Foundation building at 9:45 a.m., wearing the same jeans and sweater from the hotel gift bag, her hair pulled back as neatly as she could manage without proper supplies. Not interview appropriate by any standard, but clean, presentable enough. The building was modern glass and steel, rising 15 stories above the street. Through the windows, she could see people moving purposefully, professionals with briefcases and coffee cups and lives that made sense. Claire's courage wavered. She could leave, walk away, save herself the humiliation of sitting across from some HR director who would take one look at her and know exactly what she was. But then the door opened and a woman emerged, 50s, practical suit, kind face. Claire Bennett, she called. Too late to run. Yes, that's me. Margaret Chen, we spoke via email. Come on in. It's freezing out here. The lobby was warm and bright, decorated for the holidays with tasteful greenery and soft lights. Claire followed Margaret to the elevators, trying not to feel overwhelmed by the marble floors and modern art. So, Margaret said as they rose to the 3rd floor, Ethan mentioned you might be applying. Claire's stomach dropped. He did? Briefly, said you were looking for work and that we should give you fair consideration. Margaret smiled slightly. He also said that if I gave you preferential treatment because he recommended you, he'd be very annoyed. So rest assured, this is a real interview. The elevator doors opened onto a quiet floor filled with filing cabinets, boxes, and the organized chaos of an archive in transition. We're digitizing 30 years of foundation records, Margaret explained, leading Claire through rows of documents. It's tedious work, lots of filing, scanning, data entry, but it's important. These records represent millions of dollars in charitable giving, and we need them organized properly. She opened a door to a small conference room. Have a seat. Can I get you coffee? Water? Water would be great, thank you. Margaret returned with 2 bottles of water and a notepad. She sat across from Claire, opened a folder containing Claire's sparse resume. So, tell me about yourself. Claire took a breath. I worked tech support for 3 years before I had to leave to care for my mother. She had cancer. I spent 8 months as her primary caregiver before she passed. After that, I struggled to find work. The gap in my resume made it difficult. I can imagine. Margaret's face showed genuine sympathy, not pity. What happened after your mother died? I ran out of savings, lost my apartment, spent the last 6 months trying to survive. Homeless? No point lying. Yes, Margaret made a note. How did you hear about this position? I saw it listed online, and I met Ethan Cole a few days ago. His daughter, actually. They helped me, gave me a meal, a place to stay. I didn't ask him for a job, but when I saw the listing, I thought, Claire stopped, trying to find the right words. I thought maybe I deserved a chance to try again. Do you have reliable transportation? I can walk or take the bus. Computer skills? I'm proficient in Microsoft Office, basic data entry. I learn quickly. Margaret asked more questions about her education, her previous work, her organizational abilities. Claire answered as honestly as she could, trying not to let desperation bleed through. Finally, Margaret closed the folder. I'm going to be frank with you, Claire. You're not the most qualified candidate we've interviewed, but you're honest, which counts for a lot. And frankly, most people who apply for positions like this quit after 2 weeks because the work is boring. I get the sense you won't. I won't, Claire said firmly. I need this, and I'll work harder than anyone else you could hire. Margaret studied her for a long moment. Then she stood, extended her hand. Welcome to the Cole Foundation. You start Monday. 8 a.m. Dress code is business casual, but I'll give you your first paycheck as a signing advance so you can buy appropriate clothes. Agreed? Claire's vision blurred slightly. She stood, shook Margaret's hand. Agreed. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet. This job is mind-numbingly tedious. You might hate it. I won't. We'll see. Margaret smiled. Oh, and Claire, Ethan really didn't influence my decision. You got this on your own merit. Remember that. Claire left the building in a daze. She had a job, an actual job, starting Monday. She walked 3 blocks before the reality hit her, and then she had to sit down on a bench because her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. A job meant money. Money meant food, shelter, stability, a chance to rebuild. She pulled out the flip phone, typed a message to Ethan. I got the job. His response came quickly. I heard. Margaret said you interviewed well. Congratulations. Thank you for everything. You earned it, Claire. This part is on you. She stared at the message for a long moment, then typed, Can I ask you something? Of course. Why are you doing this? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. The response took longer this time. Because 6 months ago, I watched my daughter lose her mother and I couldn't fix it. I couldn't make it better. All I could do was watch her hurt and feel completely powerless. And then a few nights ago, she saw someone hurting and she did something about it. She didn't overthink it. She just offered cookies and kindness. And I realized I've been so busy protecting her from more pain that I forgot to teach her joy exists too. You gave her that. So maybe I'm not doing this for you. Maybe I'm doing it because my 6-year-old daughter is a better human being than I am, and I'm trying to catch up. Claire read it twice, 3 times. Then she typed back, She's lucky to have you. I think we might both be lucky to have found you. The words sat on the screen, warm and impossible. Claire closed the phone, tucked it away, and looked up at the gray December sky. Somewhere in this city, a little girl in a gray knitted cap was probably making more cookies. And her father was probably working too hard, trying to fill an empty mansion with something besides grief. And somehow, impossibly, their broken pieces were helping her glue her own back together. She stood up from the bench, pulled her coat tighter, and started walking. Not toward the bus stop this time, toward something else, something new. Something that might eventually feel like home. Monday morning arrived with the kind of cold that made breathing hurt. Claire stood outside the Cole Foundation building at 7:45 a.m., 15 minutes early, wearing clothes she'd bought over the weekend with Margaret's advance. Black slacks, white blouse, a blazer from a thrift store that almost fit. She'd spent 2 hours Sunday night ironing everything in her hotel room, making sure every crease was perfect, every button aligned. Her hands shook as she pulled open the glass door. The security guard at the desk looked up. Help you? I'm starting today, archive assistant. He checked his computer, nodded. 3rd floor, Margaret's expecting you. The elevator ride felt longer than it had during the interview. Claire watched the numbers climb, fighting the urge to hit the button for the lobby and run. She could still mess this up, show up and somehow prove she wasn't capable, wasn't worthy, wasn't... The doors opened. Margaret stood waiting, 2 coffee cups in hand. Morning. You look terrified. I'm fine. You're early, which means you're nervous. Here. She handed Claire a cup. Cream, no sugar. Lucky guess. Claire accepted it gratefully. Thank you. Come on, let me show you your desk. The archive floor was quiet this early, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of a copy machine. Margaret led Claire through rows of filing cabinets to a small desk near the window. Basic setup, computer, phone, stack of training manuals. You'll spend the first week learning our filing system, Margaret explained. It's archaic and overcomplicated because this foundation has been operating since 1987 and nobody bothered to standardize anything until now. Your job is to take these physical records, scan them, enter the metadata into our database, and file the originals properly. She gestured to 3 dozen boxes stacked against the wall. That's your starting pile. I estimate it'll take you about 6 months to get through it all, assuming you work 20 hours a week. Questions? Claire stared at the boxes. 6 months of steady work. 6 months of paychecks. 6 months of not being invisible. When do I start? Margaret smiled. Right now. Computer password is on that sticky note. Training manual is on your desk. I'll check on you at lunch. And then she was gone, leaving Claire alone with boxes and possibility. Claire sat down slowly, logged into the computer, opened the training manual. The first section was titled Understanding the Cole Foundation Filing System, 1987 to present. 43 pages of bureaucratic explanation followed. She took a breath, picked up a pen, and started reading. By noon, Claire's head ached from concentration, but she'd managed to scan and file 32 documents. It was tedious, mind-numbing work, exactly as Margaret had warned. Each document needed to be checked for damage, scanned at specific resolution, tagged with metadata, and filed according to a classification system that seemed designed by someone who enjoyed unnecessary complexity. Claire loved it, because it was real work, because she was being paid to do it, because nobody was looking at her with pity or disgust or asking her how she'd ended up homeless. "How's it going?" Claire looked up. Margaret stood in the doorway holding 2 sandwiches. "Good, I think. I finished the first box." "That's solid progress. Take a break. Eat something." They sat in the small break room, and Margaret asked casual questions about Claire's weekend, her commute, whether the hotel was working out, no mention of homelessness or charity, just normal conversation between coworkers. It felt almost surreal. "So," Margaret said, unwrapping her sandwich, "the hotel situation. You're paid through this week, right?" Claire nodded. "Ethan extended it. I told him I'd pay him back once I get a few paychecks." "He won't accept it, trust me." "I have to try." Margaret studied her. "You're stubborn. I prefer persistent." "Fair enough, but just so you know, there are transitional housing programs in the city. The foundation actually helps fund several. I can give you information if you're interested. Places designed specifically for people getting back on their feet. Not shelters, actual apartments with support services." Claire's throat tightened. "I didn't know that existed." "Most people don't. The waiting lists are usually brutal, but—" Margaret paused. "I might be able to make some calls, no promises, but if you're interested—" "I'm interested." "Good. I'll send you some links this afternoon." They finished lunch in comfortable silence, and when Claire returned to her desk, she found a new email waiting. From Ethan Cole. Subject: Dinner? "Sophie has been asking about you nonstop since Friday. She wants to know if you'd come to dinner this week. Thursday, maybe? No pressure. But fair warning, she's very persuasive when she wants to be. Ethan." Claire read it 3 times, trying to decipher the subtext. Was this pity? Obligation? Or was Sophie genuinely asking? She typed back carefully. "I don't want to impose." His response came immediately. "You're not." Sophie would consider it a personal favor. "Plus, our cook makes incredible lasagna, and I'm told you need to eat more than hotel vending machine food." "How did you know about the vending machine food?" "Lucky guess." "So, Thursday, 6 p.m.? Claire hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Every instinct told her this was a bad idea. Getting too close, accepting too much help, letting herself believe this could be something more than temporary charity. But the thought of seeing Sophie's bright face again, of sitting at an actual dinner table with people who didn't treat her like a problem to solve. "Thursday works." "Thank you. See you then." "I'll send a car. I can take the bus." "Claire, let me send the car." She smiled despite herself. "Fine. Send the car." The rest of the week passed in a blur of scanning and filing and learning to exist as a normal person again. Claire fell into a routine. Wake up at 6, shower, get dressed, walk to the foundation, work 4 hours, return to the hotel, eat something cheap, sleep, repeat. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. By Thursday evening, she'd worked through 3 boxes and earned her first partial paycheck, deposited directly into a new bank account Margaret had helped her set up. Seeing those numbers in the account balance made Claire sit on her hotel bed and cry for 10 minutes straight. $360. Not much by most people's standards, a fortune by hers. At 5:45 p.m., she changed into the one dress she'd bought, simple navy blue, long sleeves, appropriate for dinner, and tried to calm her nerves. The hotel had given her a small bottle of lotion as a courtesy gift, and she used it on her hands, which were still rough and cracked from months of exposure. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "Miss Bennett? This is James, Mr. Cole's driver. I'm downstairs whenever you're ready." Claire grabbed her coat, checked her reflection one last time, and headed down. The SUV was the same one from that first night. Black, expensive, immaculately clean. James was older, professional, kind-eyed. He opened the door for her without comment on her obvious discomfort. "Mr. Cole's residence is about 20 minutes from here," he said as they pulled into traffic. "He asked me to tell you that Sophie has been decorating all afternoon in preparation for your visit." Decorating? Paper chains, drawings. I believe there may be glitter involved. Claire smiled. Sounds like Sophie. She's a special kid. Lost her mother too young, but she's got her father's resilience. James glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Mr. Cole's a good man. Doesn't show it much anymore, but he is. Sophie brings it out of him. He seems like he's trying. More than trying lately. You've been good for both of them. Claire didn't know how to respond to that, so she watched the city pass by the window instead. They drove through progressively nicer neighborhoods, past houses that grew larger and more isolated, until finally turning onto a private road lined with old-growth trees. The Cole mansion sat at the end of the drive, all glass and stone and modern architecture. Lights glowed warmly from inside, and through the windows Claire could see movement. James parked near this front entrance. They're expecting you. Just ring the bell. You're not coming in? I've got errands to run. I'll be back to take you home around 8:30, unless you need me earlier. Claire stepped out of the SUV, suddenly aware of how underdressed she was for a house like this. The navy dress that had seemed nice in the hotel mirror now felt shabby and cheap. Before she could spiral too far into self-consciousness, the front door flew open. Sophie stood in the doorway wearing a red dress and her gray knitted cap, practically vibrating with excitement. Claire! You came! Daddy said you might not come, but I knew you would. She launched herself forward, wrapping her arms around Claire's waist in a fierce hug. Claire laughed, surprised by the intensity of her own relief. Hi, Sophie, of course I came. I made you a picture. Well, I made you 5 pictures, but one is really good. Come see. Ethan appeared behind his daughter, looking tired but amused. Jeans and a sweater instead of a suit. Hair slightly messy, like he'd been running his hands through it. More human than billionaire. Sophie, let Claire come inside before you assault her with art. It's not assault, Daddy. It's a gift. My apologies. Let her come inside before you gift her aggressively. Sophie grabbed Claire's hand and pulled her into the house. The interior was exactly as Claire had imagined. Expensive, modern, beautiful. High ceilings. Original art. Furniture that probably cost more than she'd earned in a year. But there were also signs of life. Sophie's drawings taped to the refrigerator. A basket of toys in the corner. Books scattered across the coffee table. It looked lived in, despite its size. Claire, look! Sophie dragged her to the dining table, which was covered in paper chains and crayon drawings. I made decorations, see? That's you and me and Daddy, and that's our dog. You don't have a dog, Ethan said from the doorway. We will eventually. I'm manifesting. Ethan caught Claire's eye, and they shared a smile. Dinner's almost ready, he said. Sophie, show Claire where she can put her coat. This way! Sophie led Claire down a hallway to a coat closet. Are you staying forever now? What? No, honey, just for dinner. But you could stay forever. We have lots of rooms, and Daddy said you were living in a hotel, which is sad because hotels don't have kitchens. Claire knelt down to Sophie's level. I like the hotel, and I'm only staying there until I can find an apartment. You could stay here until then. Daddy wouldn't mind. Sophie. Ethan had followed them, his expression somewhere between amused and mortified. We talked about this, remember? Claire has her own life. But she could have a life here too. That's not how it works. Sophie crossed her arms. Why not? Because people need their own space, their own independence. That sounds lonely. Sometimes it is, Claire said quietly, but sometimes it's important. Sophie considered this seriously, then she took Claire's hand again. Okay, but you'll visit a lot, right? If your dad doesn't mind. I don't mind, Ethan said. His voice was neutral, but something flickered in his expression. You're welcome here whenever you want. Dinner was lasagna, just as Ethan had promised, served by a quiet woman named Rosa, who smiled warmly at Claire and told Sophie to stop picking out the mushrooms. They sat at the dining table, too large for 3 people really, but Sophie's decorations made it feel less empty. So, Ethan said, passing Claire the salad, how's the job? Tedious, exactly as advertised. I love it. Margaret said you're doing well. Fast learner. She's being generous. I spent 20 minutes yesterday trying to figure out why a document from 1993 was filed under P instead of D. What was the logic? There wasn't any. Someone just put it in the wrong place 25 years ago. Ethan laughed. Sounds about right. The foundation's filing system was created by my father, and organizational skills were not his strength. What was his strength? Giving money away. He was brilliant at identifying causes that needed funding, terrible at everything administrative. That's why I hired Margaret. Sophie interrupted, mouth full of lasagna. Tell Claire about the penguin. There's a penguin? Claire asked. No, Ethan said firmly. Daddy donated money to save penguins in Antarctica, and I want one. I donated money so penguins could stay in Antarctica, where they belong. But they'd be happier here with us. They absolutely would not. Claire watched them banter, something warm settling in her chest. This was what normal felt like. Family dinners and silly arguments and lasagna that was too hot to eat right away. What about you? Ethan asked, turning back to Claire. Margaret mentioned she gave you information about transitional housing. Any luck? I have 2 applications pending. One program has a 3-month wait. The other is first come, first served, so it's basically a lottery. And if neither works out? Claire shrugged. I'll figure something out. I have income now. Options. The hotel is available as long as you need it. Ethan, I can't keep accepting. It's already paid through the end of the month. Canceling it doesn't get me a refund, so you might as well use it. Is that true? Close enough to true. Sophie had been watching this exchange with interest. Now she piped up. Why don't you just live here? We have so many empty rooms. Sophie, Ethan said gently. What? It's true. Yes, but we can't just invite someone to move in. Why not? You invited Rosa to live here when her apartment flooded. That was different. How? Ethan looked at Claire helplessly. She tried not to laugh. Your dad's right, Sophie. It's different. Rosa works here. I don't. You could work here. Daddy's always saying he needs someone to organize his files. I have an assistant for that. Mrs. Patterson is mean. Mrs. Patterson is efficient. Same thing. Sophie turned back to Claire. Please, it's really big and empty here, and Daddy's lonely even though he says he's not. Sophie Rose Cole. What? You are. You work all the time and you don't have friends and you never go anywhere fun. The table went quiet. Ethan's jaw was tight, and Claire could see Sophie hadn't meant to hurt him, had just stated what she saw as obvious fact. I'm fine, sweetheart, Ethan said finally. Really? No, you're not. You're sad. You've been sad since Mommy died. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. I thought maybe if Claire came over, you'd be less sad. Ethan looked stricken. He pulled Sophie out of her chair and into his lap, holding her close. Hey, no, you're right, okay? I have been sad, but that's not your job to fix. But I want to help. You do help, every single day. Claire felt like she was intruding on something private. She started to stand. Maybe I should... No. Ethan met her eyes over Sophie's head. Please don't go. I'm sorry, we're still figuring things out. You don't need to apologize. Sophie lifted her head from her father's shoulder. Are you mad at me? What? No, baby. Never. Ethan wiped her tears with his thumb. I'm sorry if I made you feel like you couldn't talk about Mommy, or about how you're feeling. You didn't. I just don't want you to be alone. I'm not alone. I have you. You know what I mean. Ethan glanced at Claire, something complicated passing across his face. Yeah, I know what you mean. The moment stretched, fragile and honest. Then Sophie wriggled out of her father's arms and went back to her seat, picking up her fork like nothing had happened. Can I have more garlic bread? May I have more garlic bread? Ethan corrected automatically. That's what I said. The tension broke. They finished dinner with lighter conversation. Sophie's upcoming winter recital, Claire's plans to eventually find an apartment with a kitchen, Ethan's admission that he couldn't cook anything beyond scrambled eggs. After dinner, Sophie insisted on showing Claire her room. It was exactly what you'd expect for a 6-year-old billionaire's daughter. Huge, filled with toys and books, decorated in purples and grays. But what struck Claire was how lived in it felt. Drawings taped to the walls, a well-worn stuffed elephant on the bed, books stacked haphazardly on the nightstand. This is Mr. Trunks, Sophie said, holding up the elephant. He was Mommy's when she was little. He looks very loved. He is. Daddy says Mommy would want me to have him. Sophie climbed onto her bed, hugging the elephant. Do you have anything from your mommy? Claire's chest tightened. A necklace, Silver with a small sapphire. She wore it every day. Where is it now? I had to sell it when I needed money. Sophie's face crumpled. That's so sad. It is, Claire agreed. But I still have the memories. Nobody can take those. That's what Daddy says, too. Sophie was quiet for a moment. I'm glad you came over. Me too. Will you come back? If your dad invites me. He will. He likes you. Sophie. He does. I can tell. He smiles more when you're here, real smiles, not pretend ones. Claire didn't know what to say to that. She sat on the edge of Sophie's bed, suddenly exhausted by the weight of this child's hope. Your dad is going through a lot, she said carefully. Losing your mom, raising you alone, running his company. He's doing the best he can. I know. That's why I want him to have help, like you. I'm not here to fix your dad, honey. I know, but maybe you could be friends? Friends help each other. Yeah, Claire said softly. They do. Downstairs, she found Ethan cleaning up the kitchen. Rosa had left for the evening, and he was loading the dishwasher with the focused concentration of someone who needed a task. Sophie okay? He asked without looking up. Yeah, she's reading in her room. Good. He closed the dishwasher, leaned against the counter. I'm sorry about earlier. She's struggling with everything. The grief, the loneliness. She sees me working all the time and thinks it means I'm avoiding her. Are you? The question came out before Claire could stop it. Ethan's head snapped up, surprised. Maybe, he admitted. Not intentionally, but work is easier than feeling things, safer. I get that. Do you? Claire thought about the months she'd spent focused solely on survival, on not feeling, on getting through each day without breaking. Yeah, I do. Ethan studied her for a long moment. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you apply for the job at the foundation? You could have just taken the hotel room, the money, and disappeared. Nobody would have blamed you. I thought about it, Claire admitted, but disappearing is what I'd been doing for months, and it wasn't working. So when you offered help, I decided to try something different. I decided to stay visible. That took courage, or desperation. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. Ethan smiled slightly. Fair point. He grabbed 2 glasses from the cabinet. Wine? Or is that too weird given the whole boss-employee thing? You're not technically my boss. Margaret is. Then wine it is. They moved to the living room, sitting in expensive chairs that somehow felt comfortable despite their modern design. Through the massive windows, the city glowed in the distance, a blanket of lights against the darkness. This house is beautiful, Claire said. But Sophie's right. It does feel empty. It wasn't always. Anna filled it with life, art everywhere, music, people. She'd throw these elaborate dinner parties where she'd invite artists and activists and people who had absolutely nothing in common, and somehow it would work. The house felt alive when she was here. And now? Now it's just expensive real estate that reminds me what I lost. He took a sip of wine. I keep thinking I should sell it, buy something smaller. But Sophie loves it here, and I can't bring myself to take anything else away from her. She seems happy, considering everything. She's resilient, like her mother. Ethan was quiet for a moment. I worry I'm failing her, working too much, not knowing how to talk about Anna without falling apart, not being able to give her the stability she needs. You're here. You show up. That counts for more than you think. Is it enough? I don't know, but it's something. Claire set down her wine glass. My mom and I didn't have much, but she was present. She listened. She tried. That mattered more than anything money could buy. Your mother sounds like she was a good person. She was. She deserved better than what she got. So did you. The words hung in the air between them. Claire looked away first, uncomfortable with the weight of his attention. I should probably go. It's getting late. James won't be back for another 30 minutes. Stay, please. So she stayed. They talked about nothing important. Books they'd read, movies they'd seen, what it was like growing up in different worlds. Ethan had gone to boarding school, summer camps in Europe, college without student loans. Claire had worked retail through high school, commuted to State University, graduated with debt she'd only recently finished paying off. Different lives, different paths. But somehow, sitting in this expensive living room, the distance didn't feel as vast as it should have. When James finally arrived, Sophie was already asleep, and Claire found herself reluctant to leave. The house had felt warm tonight, real, like maybe it wasn't as empty as Ethan believed. "Thank you for coming," Ethan said at the door. "Sophie will be talking about this for weeks." "Thank you for having me, and for the job, and everything else." "You keep thanking me. Stop it. Make me." He smiled, a real one, like Sophie had said. "Stubborn. Persistent. Right. I forgot." He paused. "Come back soon? Sophie wasn't wrong. This house is better when you're in it." Claire's heart did something complicated. "I'll think about it." Fair enough. The drive back to the hotel felt longer than it should have. Claire stared out the window, replaying the evening in her head. Sophie's decorations. Ethan's honesty. The feeling of being wanted, not out of pity, but because she'd somehow become part of their strange, broken little orbit. It was dangerous, letting herself get attached. Dangerous to believe this could last. But for the first time in months, dangerous felt better than safe. The weeks that followed fell into an unexpected rhythm that Claire didn't quite trust yet. Work became her anchor. She'd arrive at the Cole Foundation each morning, lose herself in boxes of documents and filing systems that made no logical sense, and leave 4 hours later feeling like she'd accomplished something real. Margaret checked in regularly, offering guidance without hovering, treating Claire like an actual employee rather than a charity case. The hotel room remained hers through the end of December. Ethan kept extending it despite Claire's protests, and eventually she stopped arguing because finding an apartment on her limited income was proving harder than she'd anticipated. Every place she could afford was either already rented or required first and last month's rent plus deposit, money she didn't have yet. And then there were the dinners. Sophie had extracted a promise from Claire that first Thursday, and the little girl had excellent memory. Every week, sometimes twice a week, James would pick Claire up and drive her to the mansion where Sophie waited with drawings or stories or elaborate plans for activities that usually involved glitter. Ethan was always there, quieter than his daughter, but present in a way that felt deliberate, like he was actively choosing to be home instead of buried in his office. Claire told herself it was fine. They were just being kind. Sophie needed positive influences, and Claire happened to be available. She almost believed it. It was mid-January when everything shifted. Claire had just finished scanning a particularly tedious box of grant applications from 1995 when Margaret appeared at her desk holding a folder. "Good news," Margaret said. "One of the transitional housing programs came through. They have an opening." Claire's heart jumped. "Really?" "Studio apartment in a supervised building. Rent is subsidized based on income, which in your case means about 30% of what you're currently earning. Includes utilities. Move-in is 1st of February. That's 2 weeks away. I know it's fast, but these spots don't stay open long. If you want it, I need to confirm today." Claire stared at the folder Margaret held. This was what she'd been working toward. Independence, stability, a place that was actually hers. So why did her stomach twist with something that felt uncomfortably like loss? "Yes," she said firmly. "I want it." "Good. I'll make the call." Margaret paused. "You've done well, Claire. Your mom would be proud." The words hit harder than expected. Claire nodded, not trusting her voice. After Margaret left, Claire sat at her desk staring at nothing. She should feel relieved, excited. This was the goal, getting back on her feet, reclaiming her independence, proving she could survive without constant help. Instead, she felt untethered. Her phone buzzed. Text from Sophie, sent from Ethan's phone because 6-year-olds didn't have their own devices yet. "Can you come to dinner tonight? Daddy made spaghetti, and he says it's edible, but I'm not sure I believe him." Claire smiled despite the knot in her chest. "I'll be there. Tell him I'm bringing garlic bread as backup." Good idea. His cooking is suspicious. That evening, Claire stopped at a grocery store on the way to the mansion and bought ingredients for actual garlic bread. It felt strange spending money on food she'd prepare for other people. But also good. Normal. Like something a person with a life did. James picked her up at 5:30, and they made small talk about the weather during the drive. The mansion looked different in January, snow covering the grounds, icicles hanging from the roof, lights glowing warmly against the winter darkness. Sophie met her at the door wearing pajamas and her omnipresent gray knitted cap. You're early. Traffic was light. Where's your dad? Kitchen, burning things probably. Claire followed Sophie through the house, and sure enough, found Ethan standing over the stove looking frustrated while smoke drifted from a pan. Don't say anything, he muttered without turning around. I brought bread. Thank God. He turned, saw her holding the grocery bag, and his expression softened. You didn't have to do that. Self-preservation. Sophie warned me about your cooking. She's not wrong. Ethan scraped blackened garlic into the trash. I can code in 6 programming languages and run a company worth billions, but apparently kitchen appliances defeat me. Want help? Desperately. They worked together, Claire slicing bread while Ethan managed the pasta with excessive concentration. Sophie sat at the kitchen island doing homework, or pretending to while she watched them with obvious interest. Claire, how do you spell because? Sophie asked. Sound it out. B-E-C-U-Z? Close. B-E-C-A-U-S-E. That's too many letters. English is stupid. Agreed, Ethan said, but we're stuck with it. The garlic bread went into the oven, filling the kitchen with the smell of butter and herbs. The pasta actually turned out decent. Ethan had managed not to overcook it. They ate at the kitchen table instead of the formal dining room, Sophie telling elaborate stories about her school day while Ethan listened with the kind of focused attention that suggested he'd learned the hard way not to miss details. And then Marcus said his dad has a boat, and I said, well, my dad has a whole company. And he said, that's not as cool as a boat. And I said, Sophie, Ethan interrupted gently, maybe don't turn everything into a competition. But I won. That's not the point. What is the point? Being kind is better than being right. Sophie considered this. Can I be both? Claire laughed, earning a grateful look from Ethan. After dinner, Sophie begged Claire to read her bedtime story. Ethan looked like he might object. Bedtime was their routine, but Sophie had already grabbed Claire's hand and was dragging her toward the stairs. Go, Ethan said. I'll clean up. Sophie's room felt different at night. The overhead light was off, replaced by a small lamp shaped like a moon that cast soft shadows across the walls. Sophie climbed into bed, clutching Mr. Trunks, and patted the space beside her. This is where Daddy usually sits. Claire sat, accepted the book Sophie handed her. Some story about a mouse who wanted to be an elephant. She read slowly, doing different voices for each character, and watched Sophie's eyes start to droop. Claire? Sophie mumbled, half asleep. Yeah? Are you going to leave? The question stopped Claire mid-sentence. What do you mean? People always leave. Mommy left. And you're going to leave too, aren't you? Claire set the book down carefully. Sophie, your mom didn't choose to leave. She got sick. I know, but she's still gone. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. And you're going to go away too. I can tell. What makes you think that? You look sad sometimes, like you're thinking about somewhere else. And Daddy gets this look on his face when he watches you, like he's already practicing for when you're not here anymore. The observation was so sharp, so painfully accurate, that Claire didn't know how to respond. The 6-year-old had read her better than most adults ever had. I got an apartment, Claire said quietly. I'm moving in a couple weeks. Sophie sat up, tears spilling over. So you are leaving? I'm not leaving. I'm just getting my own place. That's different. No, it's not. You'll be somewhere else, and we won't see you, and you'll forget about us. Sophie, I could never forget about you. Claire stopped, choosing words carefully. You changed my life. You and your dad. I was in a really dark place when we met, and you saw me. You made me feel human again. That's not something I'm going to forget. Then why can't you just stay here? Because I need to learn to take care of myself again. I need to prove I can do this. That's stupid. Why can't you prove it here? Sophie rose. That's enough. They both turned. Ethan stood in the doorway, expression unreadable. Bed. Now. His voice was firm, but not angry. Claire, can I talk to you downstairs? Sophie sniffled, slid back under her covers. Claire kissed her forehead. When had that become automatic? And whispered, We'll talk more later, okay? Promise? Promise. Downstairs, Ethan poured himself a drink. Whiskey. Neat. He didn't offer Claire one, just stood at the window staring out at the dark grounds. I'm sorry, Claire started. I should have told you about the apartment before telling Sophie. You don't owe me advance notice about your living situation. Then what's wrong? He turned to face her. Nothing's wrong. I'm glad you found a place. That's what we've been working toward. You don't sound glad. I'm complicated. Join the club. Ethan almost smiled. Then the expression faded. Sophie's been through a lot, more than any kid should have to handle. And she's attached to you, more than I realized. I'm attached to her too, which is going to make this harder. Make what harder? The transition. When you move out, start your new life. You'll have your own routine, your own space. Dinners here will become less frequent. Eventually you'll meet someone, build a different life. Sophie will have to adjust to you not being around as much. Claire crossed her arms. You're already writing the ending of this story. I'm being realistic. No, you're protecting yourself. There's a difference. Maybe I need to. Maybe we both do. The words hung heavy between them. Claire felt something crack in her chest, anger mixed with hurt, mixed with frustration. What do you want from me, Ethan? You want me to stay dependent? Keep living in hotel rooms you pay for so I'm always available when Sophie needs a substitute mother figure? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you're upset I'm actually succeeding at getting my life back together. I'm not upset. I'm scared. The admission stopped her cold. Ethan set down his glass, ran both hands through his hair. Sophie lost her mother. And I know you're not trying to replace Anna. I know that. But Sophie sees you as someone safe, someone who shows up. And when you move on with your life, which you absolutely should, she's going to feel abandoned again. And I don't know how to protect her from that. You can't, Claire said softly. People leave. People die. People move to different apartments. That's life. You can't bubble wrap her against loss. I can try. And what? Keep her isolated in this mansion forever? Never let her get attached to anyone because they might leave? That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. I'm saying I'm not ready for you to go either. The confession landed like a physical blow. Claire stared at him, heart pounding. Ethan, I know it's not fair to put that on you. You've worked hard to get here. You deserve independence. But watching you with Sophie tonight, seeing you in my kitchen making garlic bread like it's the most natural thing in the world, he stopped, jaw tight. This house has been empty for 18 months. And then you walked into it and suddenly it wasn't anymore. Claire couldn't breathe properly. I don't know what you want me to say. Nothing. I don't want you to say anything. I just needed you to know that when you leave, you're not just going to be another person who drifted through Sophie's life. You matter to both of us. The weight of it pressed against Claire's ribs. She'd spent months learning to disappear, to not matter, to take up as little space as possible. And now this man, this complicated, grieving, impossibly kind man, was telling her she mattered. She didn't know how to hold that. I'm moving into the apartment, she said finally. I have to, for me. I know. But that doesn't mean I'm disappearing. I'll still come to dinner, still read Sophie's stories, still burn garlic bread with you. Promise? I promise. As long as you want me here. Something shifted in Ethan's expression. Relief, maybe. Or hope. I'll always want you here. The words felt heavier than they should. Claire looked away first, uncomfortable with the intensity of his gaze. I should go. It's late. James already left for the night. I'll drive you. You don't have to... Claire, let me drive you. The car ride was quiet. Ethan's SUV was smaller than James's, more personal. Claire watched the city lights blur past, hyper-aware of Ethan beside her, the small space between them, the things they weren't saying. Can I ask you something? Ethan said finally. Sure. Do you ever regret it? Taking Sophie's cookies that night? Claire thought about it. No, it was the first time in months someone treated me like a person instead of a problem. I needed that. What if I told you I think about that night constantly? About what would have happened if I'd convinced Sophie to just keep driving? Then I'd say you think too much. Occupational hazard. They pulled up to the hotel. Ethan put the car in park but didn't move to let her out. The apartment, he said. When you move in, you'll need furniture. I'll manage. I have storage units full of Anna's things. Art, furniture, books, stuff I couldn't bring myself to donate but don't know what to do with. You could take whatever you want. Ethan, I can't. Please. It's just sitting in climate-controlled units costing me money and gathering dust. Anna would have wanted her things to be used, not locked away. Claire hesitated. I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. She reached for the door handle, then stopped. Thank you. For tonight. For being honest. You make it easy to be honest. I don't think I do, but I appreciate the lie. She climbed out before he could respond, hurried into the hotel without looking back. In her room, she sat on the bed and let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. 2 weeks until the apartment. 2 weeks to figure out how to maintain boundaries with a family that was already starting to feel like hers. The next morning at work, Margaret appeared at Claire's desk with coffee and a knowing look. You look stressed. I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. What's wrong? Claire debated how much to share. Sophie's upset about me moving, and he's worried about her. And you're worried about both of them. Is it that obvious? Margaret sat on the edge of Claire's desk. You're getting attached. That's human, but you need to be careful. Of what? Getting so wrapped up in their lives that you forget to build your own. Margaret's expression was kind but firm. I've seen it before. People who've been through trauma, who've lost everything, they latch onto the first stable thing they find. And the Coles are very latching worthy, but you can't make them your whole world. I'm not. Aren't you? When's the last time you did something just for yourself? Made a friend who isn't connected to Ethan? Went somewhere that wasn't work or the mansion? Claire didn't have an answer. I'm not saying don't care about them, Margaret continued. I'm saying make sure you're building a life that can stand on its own. The apartment is a good start. What's next? I don't know. Figure it out, because Sophie will be fine. Ethan will be fine. But if you lose yourself trying to fix them, nobody wins. The words settled uncomfortably. Claire returned to her filing, but Margaret's warning echoed through the afternoon. That evening, instead of accepting Sophie's dinner invitation, Claire texted Ethan. I need a night to myself. Rain check? His response was immediate. Of course. Everything okay? Yeah, just need to think. Understood. We're here when you're ready. Claire spent the evening walking through the city, no destination in mind. She passed restaurants and shops, watched couples and families, listened to street musicians playing for spare change. This was her city now. Her life. She needed to figure out what that looked like beyond work and the Coles. She found herself outside a bookstore, warm light spilling onto the snowy sidewalk. On impulse, she went inside. The smell of coffee and paper wrapped around her. Claire wandered through the aisles, trailing her fingers along spines, remembering when she used to do this for fun instead of survival. She picked up a novel she'd been meaning to read, carried it to the counter. That's a good one, the cashier said. Young woman, bright smile, nose ring. Devastating but good. I could use devastating. Rough day? Rough few months. I hear that. The cashier rang up the book. We have a book club that meets here Wednesday nights if you're interested. Pretty casual. Wine and opinions. Claire almost said no automatically, then remembered Margaret's words. What time? 7. Just show up. We're friendly, I promise. Claire paid for the book, tucked it into her coat. Maybe I will. Walking back to the hotel, she felt something shift. Small, but real. She'd bought a book, considered joining a book club, made a choice that had nothing to do with survival or obligation. It wasn't much, but it was hers. The apartment keys arrived on January 28th. Claire stood outside the building, 4 stories, brick, old but well-maintained, and stared at the key ring in her palm. Unit 2C, her unit. Margaret had arranged for her to see it before move-in day. Claire climbed the stairs slowly, heart pounding. The hallway smelled like cleaning products and old carpet. Her door was 3rd on the left, blue paint slightly chipped. The key turned smoothly. Inside was small. Studio layout, maybe 400 square feet total. Kitchenette in one corner, bathroom barely big enough for a shower. One large window overlooking the street. Hardwood floors that had seen better days. It was perfect. Claire walked to the window, looked out at the city. Her city. From her apartment. She'd done this, survived the streets, found work, earned this space. Her phone buzzed. Text from Ethan. Sophie wanted me to ask if you need help moving. We have a truck. And arms. Well, I have arms. Sophie has very small arms, but she's enthusiastic. Claire smiled. I don't have much to move, but I'll take any furniture you're serious about donating. I'm serious. Saturday? I'll bring the storage unit keys. Saturday works. She spent the rest of the week preparing. Bought sheets and towels with her paycheck, made lists of what she needed, told the hotel she'd be checking out February 1st. On Saturday morning, Ethan arrived with a truck, Sophie, and Rosa, who'd apparently insisted on helping despite it being her day off. I packed sandwiches, Rosa announced. Moving is hungry work. The storage unit was in a climate-controlled facility 30 minutes outside the city. Ethan unlocked it, pulled up the door, and Claire's breath caught. It was full of beautiful things. Mid-century modern furniture, abstract paintings, sculptures, rugs, evidence of Anna's artistic eye, her life, her taste. Take whatever you want, Ethan said quietly. Really? Claire walked through slowly, trailing her fingers over a teal velvet couch, a brass floor lamp, a wooden coffee table with geometric inlay. Each piece felt too valuable, too personal. The couch, she said finally. If you're sure. I'm sure. And maybe that lamp. And the small bookshelf. Done. They loaded the truck carefully, Sophie directing traffic like a tiny foreman. By noon, they'd filled Claire's apartment with furniture that transformed the empty studio into something that looked almost like a home. The teal couch sat against the main wall, the lamp in the corner casting warm light, the bookshelf waiting to be filled. A small dining table Rosa had insisted on, saying every home needed a place to eat properly. Claire stood in the center of it all, overwhelmed. What do you think? Ethan asked. I think I might cry. Good tears or bad tears? I'm not sure yet. Sophie grabbed her hand. Can I come visit, please? Of course. Anytime. Can I spend the night sometimes? Sophie, Ethan warned. What? It would be fun, like a sleepover. Claire knelt down to Sophie's level. Let me get settled first, okay? Then we'll talk about sleepovers. Promise? Promise. They ordered pizza for lunch, eating on the floor because Claire didn't have chairs yet. Rosa told stories about her own first apartment, making them all laugh. Sophie drew pictures that she taped to Claire's refrigerator. Ethan was quiet, but his eyes kept finding Claire's, something soft in his expression. By late afternoon, everyone was exhausted. Rosa left first, hugging Claire and telling her to call if she needed anything. Sophie fell asleep in the truck on the way to drop them off. Ethan carried his daughter up to the apartment door, then returned alone. I should go, he said. Let you settle in. Thank you for all of this. You've thanked me about 40 times today. Stop. Make me. He smiled. Then his expression turned serious. You're going to be okay, you know, more than okay. I hope so. I know so. He stepped closer, and for a moment Claire thought he might hug her. Instead, he just touched her shoulder briefly. See you soon? Yeah, soon. After he left, Claire sat on Anna's teal couch in her empty apartment and let herself feel everything. Pride, gratitude, fear, hope. All of it mixed together into something too big to name. She'd done it. She had a job, an apartment. People who cared whether she was okay. She wasn't invisible anymore. And somehow, that was the most terrifying part. The first night alone in the apartment, Claire didn't sleep. Not because the couch was uncomfortable. Anna had clearly had excellent taste, and the teal velvet was softer than anything Claire had slept on in months. Not because the neighborhood was loud or unsafe. The building was quiet, the street below peaceful. She didn't sleep because the silence was deafening. For months, she'd been surrounded by noise. The constant hum of the city, the conversations of strangers, the sounds of survival. Even the hotel had been loud. Ice machines, footsteps in hallways, muffled televisions through thin walls. This apartment was hers, completely hers, and the quiet of it felt like drowning. Claire lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, watching car headlights create moving patterns across the plaster. She thought about Sophie asleep in her massive bedroom surrounded by drawings and stuffed animals. About Ethan probably still awake, working in his home office because sleep was easier to avoid than memories. About how much easier it had been to focus on their lives instead of building her own. Around 3 a.m., she gave up on sleep and made tea in her tiny kitchenette. The hot plate worked. The single cabinet held 2 mugs she'd bought at a thrift store. Everything was sparse but functional. She sat at the small dining table Rosa had insisted on and opened her laptop, another thrift store find, old but serviceable. The screen glowed in the darkness as she stared at a blank document. What did she want? Not survival anymore. She had that. But what came after survival? The cursor blinked, waiting. Claire closed the laptop without typing anything. Work the next Monday felt different. Claire arrived at the foundation and realized this was her first day commuting from an actual address, not a hotel room someone else paid for. She'd taken the bus, spent 45 minutes in traffic, and felt ridiculously proud of the mundane accomplishment. Margaret noticed immediately. You look tired. Couldn't sleep. New place. That'll pass. Give it a week. Margaret set a file on Claire's desk. We're expanding your hours if you want them. 30 per week instead of 20. Same rate. Claire's stomach flipped. Seriously? You've cleared 6 boxes ahead of schedule. I'd be stupid not to use you more. Margaret paused. Unless you need the time for something else? No, yes. I want the hours. Good. Starting next week. Claire spent the morning scanning documents and doing mental math. 30 hours at $18 was $540 a week. Over $2,000 a month. After taxes and subsidized rent, she'd actually have money left over. Enough to save. Maybe enough to stop feeling like everything could collapse at any second. At lunch, her phone buzzed. Text from Sophie via Ethan's phone. We miss you. When are you coming over? Daddy says I can't bother you, but I think you don't mind being bothered. Claire smiled. Not a bother. How about Thursday? Yes. Can you stay for my recital? It's at school at 6. Daddy says we can pick you up. What kind of recital? Piano. I'm playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, but the fancy version. I wouldn't miss it. Thursday arrived with sleet that turned the city gray and miserable. Claire left work early, went home to change into something more appropriate than work clothes, and was waiting outside her building when Ethan's SUV pulled up. Sophie practically launched herself out of the car. Claire, I'm so nervous. What if I mess up? Then you keep playing. Nobody will notice. What if I forget the whole song? You won't. But what if I do? Ethan appeared behind his daughter, umbrella in hand. Sophie, breathe. I'm breathing. Slower breathing, the kind that doesn't lead to hyperventilation. They drove to Sophie's school, a private institution with manicured grounds, and the kind of architecture that screamed expensive education. The recital was in a small auditorium filled with parents, grandparents, and younger siblings. Claire sat between Ethan and an empty seat he'd saved for his coat. I hate these things, Ethan muttered as they waited for the recital to start. Why? Because there are always other parents who feel the need to network. I run a tech company. Therefore, I must want to discuss investment opportunities during my daughter's piano recital. Do you? I want to watch Sophie play piano without someone pitching me their startup idea. As if summoned by the complaint, a man in an expensive suit approached. Ethan Cole! Haven't seen you since the charity gala. How's the company? Ethan's smile was polite, but didn't reach his eyes. Fine, Richard. Yourself? Can't complain. Say, I've been meaning to reach out about a project my firm is developing. Richard, Ethan's voice was firm. I'm here for my daughter, not business. Of course. Just thought, another time. Richard retreated, looking slightly affronted. Claire bit back a smile. That was harsh, she said, but that was necessary. If I entertain one pitch, I'll get 12 more before the night's over. Ethan glanced at her. Sorry, I'm not great at these social things. You seemed fine at dinner. That's different. That's my house, my rules. Here, I'm just... He stopped, searching for words. The billionaire everyone wants something from? Yeah, that. The lights dimmed before Claire could respond. The recital began with a series of performances by older students, some talented, some clearly there under parental duress. Then Sophie's name was called. She walked onto the stage looking tiny and terrified, her gray knitted cap replaced by a red bow in her hair. She sat at the piano, adjusted the bench twice, and looked directly at Ethan and Claire. Ethan gave her a thumbs up. Claire waved. Sophie took a breath and began to play. The first few notes were shaky, but then she found her rhythm. Twinkle, twinkle, twinkle little star transformed into something more complex, her small fingers moving across the keys with surprising confidence. She made one mistake near the middle, hit the wrong note, paused for half a second, then kept going like Claire had told her to. When she finished, the applause was generous. Sophie beamed, took a small bow, and practically ran off the stage. She was amazing, Claire whispered. She was terrified, Ethan said. But he was smiling, real and unguarded. After the recital, they found Sophie backstage, still vibrating with adrenaline. Did you see? Did you see me? I messed up the middle, but I kept going. You were perfect, Ethan said, pulling her into a hug. Claire, did you like it? Loved it. When's the next one? Not until May, but I'll practice, and you have to come to that one too. Deal. They went to dinner at a small Italian place Sophie loved. She talked non-stop about the recital, the other performances, how Marcus from her class had completely frozen during his song and had to start over 3 times. I felt bad for him, Sophie said around a mouthful of pasta. But also I'm glad it wasn't me. That's called empathy mixed with relief, Ethan said. Totally normal. Is it mean? No, just honest. Sophie turned to Claire. Do you play piano? I used to, not well. Maybe we could play together sometime. Maybe. The evening felt easy in a way Claire was starting to recognize. Sophie's energy filled the spaces between conversations, making silences comfortable instead of awkward. Ethan relaxed incrementally, his shoulders losing some of their permanent tension. On the drive back to Claire's apartment, Sophie fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from performance adrenaline. She really was great tonight, Claire said quietly. She was. Thank you for coming. You don't have to thank me. I wanted to be there. Ethan pulled up outside her building but didn't immediately unlock the doors. Can I ask you something? Sure. Are you happy? In the apartment? Claire considered the question. I think so. It's weird being alone again, but good weird. Good weird is better than bad weird. Profound observation. He smiled. I try. Then his expression shifted, became more serious. I know Margaret talked to you about not getting too wrapped up in our lives. Claire stiffened. She was just looking out for me. She was right. You need your own life, your own friends, things that aren't connected to Sophie and me. He paused. But I also want you to know that you're not a burden or an obligation. When we invite you to things, it's because we want you there, not because we feel sorry for you. I know that. Do you? Because sometimes I see you pulling back like you're afraid of taking up too much space. And I need you to understand, you're allowed to take up space in our lives. Here, he gestured vaguely at the world beyond the windshield. Wherever. Claire's throat felt tight. I'm still figuring out how to do that. That's fair. Just don't disappear while you're figuring it out. I won't. Promise? Promise. She climbed out of the SUV, waved goodbye to Sophie's sleeping form, and watched them drive away. Inside her apartment, Claire sat on the teal couch and thought about Ethan's words. You're allowed to take up space. She'd spent so long trying to be invisible, trying not to need anything, that the idea of deliberately taking up space felt almost revolutionary. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Hi, this is Jen from the bookstore. Just confirming you're coming to book club tomorrow? No pressure. Just wanted to send the address. Claire had almost forgotten. Wednesday night, book club. The thing she'd agreed to in a moment of impulsive self-improvement. She could cancel, make an excuse, stay home where it was safe and familiar. Instead, she typed back, I'll be there. What should I bring? Just yourself and opinions. We provide the wine. The next evening, Claire almost talked herself out of going 3 separate times. The bookstore was a 30-minute walk from her apartment. The book club might be full of people who had their lives together, who would take one look at her and know she'd been homeless 2 months ago. She didn't know how to be social anymore, but she'd promised herself she'd try. So she put on clean jeans and a sweater, grabbed the book she'd bought, and forced herself out the door before she could change her mind. The bookstore was warm and crowded. Claire followed handwritten signs to a back room where 7 people sat in a circle, wine glasses in hand, talking and laughing. Jen spotted her immediately. Claire, you came! Yeah, hi. Everyone, this is Claire. Claire, this is everyone. Grab wine and find a seat. The introductions blurred together. There was Marcus, who worked in advertising. Lisa and Sarah, a married couple who taught at the university. Tom, a nurse. Others whose names Claire immediately forgot because her anxiety was making it hard to focus. They talked about the book first, a literary thriller about a woman trying to escape her past. The discussion was lively, occasionally heated, with people interrupting each other and laughing at their own passionate opinions. Claire mostly listened, sipping wine and feeling overwhelmed by the normalcy of it all. These were just people, regular people talking about a book. Nothing scary or complicated. "Claire, you're quiet," Jen said. "What did you think?" Everyone looked at her. Claire's first instinct was to deflect, to say something non-committal and redirect attention elsewhere. Instead, she heard herself say, "I thought the ending was too neat. The main character spent the whole book learning she couldn't outrun her past, and then suddenly she does? It felt dishonest." "Yes," Lisa leaned forward. "That's exactly what bothered me. Like the author got scared of the dark ending and chickened out." "Or maybe she just wanted to give readers hope," Sarah countered. "Not every story needs to end in tragedy. But it needs to end honestly," Marcus said. And that ending felt like a betrayal of everything that came before. The conversation spiraled from there, people building on Claire's observation, debating endings and hope and narrative honesty. Claire felt something unclench in her chest. Her opinion had mattered. People had listened. After book club ended, Jen caught her at the door. "Come back next week?" "What's the book?" "Historical fiction about a female codebreaker in World War II. Very different from this one." "I'll think about it." "Fair enough, but I hope you do. It was nice having you." Walking home, Claire realized she was smiling. She'd gone to a thing, a normal social thing with people who weren't Ethan or Sophie or connected to her job. She'd had opinions and shared them, and nobody had looked at her like she was broken. Margaret had been right. She needed this, needed pieces of life that were just hers. The following week settled into a new rhythm. Claire worked 30 hours at the foundation, building up her savings account with each paycheck. She went to book club on Wednesdays, slowly learning names and starting to recognize inside jokes. She had dinner with the Coles once or twice a week, watching Sophie grow more confident and Ethan grow incrementally less guarded. She was building a life, slowly, imperfectly, but undeniably. Then February turned into March, and everything got complicated. It started with Mrs. Patterson. Ethan's assistant was a severe woman in her 60s who ran his schedule with military precision. Claire had met her exactly once when she'd stopped by the mansion to drop off files Ethan had requested from the Foundation archives. Mrs. Patterson had looked at Claire like she was a stain on expensive carpet. "You're the homeless girl," she'd said. Not a question. "I'm Claire from the Foundation." Mrs. Patterson had taken the files without thanks and closed the door. Now, apparently, Mrs. Patterson had opinions about Claire's presence in Ethan's life, opinions she felt entitled to share. Claire only knew about this because Sophie told her, with the unfiltered honesty of a child who didn't understand workplace politics. "Mrs. Patterson said you're taking advantage of Daddy," Sophie announced over dinner one Thursday. "What does that mean?" Ethan's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "Sophie, where did you hear that?" "She was talking on the phone. I wasn't eavesdropping. She was just really loud." "What exactly did she say?" Sophie scrunched up her face, concentrating. "She said that woman, that's you, Claire, is clearly taking advantage of a grieving widower and his daughter, and someone needs to protect him from making a mistake." The table went silent. Claire felt ice slide down her spine. "Sophie," Ethan said carefully, "go upstairs for a minute, please." "But I'm not done eating. Now, please." Something in his tone made Sophie obey without argument. When they were alone, Ethan dropped his head into his hands. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Mrs. Patterson she's incredibly efficient, but sometimes she oversteps." "She thinks I'm using you," Claire said flatly. "She thinks everyone is using me. It's her job to be paranoid." "Is she wrong?" Ethan's head snapped up. "What?" "I'm working at your foundation. Living in furniture your late wife picked out. Having dinner at your house twice a week. From the outside, it probably does look like I'm taking advantage. From the outside, people are judgmental assholes who don't know anything about our lives. But they're not entirely wrong, are they? I was homeless. You helped me. Now I'm—" She gestured vaguely. "Here, in your life. Maybe she's right to be concerned." Claire stopped. I should probably create some distance, for everyone's sake. Is that what you want? The question hung between them. Claire didn't know how to answer it honestly. Because no, it wasn't what she wanted. She wanted these dinners and Sophie's laughter and the way Ethan looked at her sometimes like she was the only stable thing in his unstable world. But wanting something didn't make it right. I don't know what I want, she said finally. But I know I don't want to be someone people whisper about, someone who took advantage of a grieving family. Nobody who matters thinks that. Your assistant matters. She's trying to protect you. From what? From someone who makes my daughter happy? From someone who... He stopped abruptly. Who what? Ethan stood, paced to the window. From someone who makes this house feel like home again. From someone I look forward to seeing. From someone who reminds me I'm allowed to be happy. Claire's chest constricted. Ethan. I know this is complicated, but Mrs. Patterson's opinion doesn't change the fact that you belong here. He turned to face her. Unless you want to leave, in which case I'll respect that. But don't leave because my assistant is a judgmental busybody. What if she's right, though? What if I am taking advantage without meaning to? I've gotten so comfortable here, so used to this being part of my life, that maybe I've stopped seeing how unbalanced it is. Unbalanced how? You've given me everything. A job, furniture, friendship. What have I given you? Are you serious? Ethan crossed the room, stopped in front of her. You gave me my daughter back. Before you, Sophie was quiet, withdrawn. She smiled, but it never reached her eyes. Now she's drawing pictures and demanding sleepovers and asking about getting a dog. You did that. That's just her healing. You helped her heal. And you helped me realize I was so busy protecting her from grief that I was actually teaching her to bury it. You showed both of us that it's okay to feel things, to need people, to let someone new into our lives without feeling like we're betraying Anna's memory. Claire's vision blurred. I don't know how to accept that. Then just believe it, please. Before she could respond, Sophie called from upstairs. Can I come back down now? I'm starving. Yes, Ethan called back. Then, quieter, to Claire. We're not done talking about this. I know. Sophie thundered down the stairs, oblivious to the tension she was walking back into. She reclaimed her seat and resumed eating like nothing had happened. Is Mrs. Patterson in trouble? She asked hopefully. Sophie. What? She was mean about Claire. That's not okay. I'll handle it. Does that mean you're firing her? No, it means I'll have a conversation about appropriate boundaries. Oh, that's boring. Despite everything, Claire almost laughed. The conversation with Mrs. Patterson must have happened, because the next time Claire saw her, dropping off more files a week later, the assistant was icily professional but silent on the subject of Claire's character. Still, the damage was done. Claire couldn't unhear the words taking advantage, couldn't unknow that people were watching, judging, forming opinions about her presence in Ethan's life. She started pulling back, not dramatically, still went to dinners, still read Sophie stories, but she created small distances, left earlier in the evenings, declined invitations for weekend activities, stopped texting Ethan about small things that didn't matter. He noticed. Of course he noticed. You're disappearing again, he said one night, walking her to the door after a particularly quiet dinner. I'm not. Claire, I can see you doing it, the way you did when we first met, making yourself smaller. I'm just trying to be appropriate. Appropriate for who? Mrs. Patterson? For everyone. For Sophie. For you. I don't want appropriate. I want honest. Claire turned to face him, exhausted by the weight of her own uncertainty. What do you want from me, Ethan? Really? Because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be part of your life without wondering if I'm overstepping or taking advantage, or I want you to stop overthinking everything and just be here. With us. However that looks. That's not an answer. Yes, it is. You just don't like it because it's messy and undefined. I need defined. I need to know what this is. What if I don't know either? Ethan's voice was raw. What if I'm just as confused as you are? All I know is that my life is better with you in it, and Sophie's life is better with you in it, and I don't want to lose that because we're both too scared to admit we need each other. Need is dangerous. So is loneliness. The words settled between them. heavy with truth. Claire looked at this man who'd somehow become essential to her existence in the space of a few months and felt the full weight of how much she'd let him matter. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of what?" "Of this disappearing, of waking up one day and realizing it was all temporary, that I'm still that woman at the bus stop, just better dressed." Ethan reached out, took her hand. His palm was warm against hers. "You were never just that woman at the bus stop. You were always this person. The circumstances were temporary. You weren't." "How do you know?" "Because I'm looking at you right now, and I see the same strength that let you survive months on the street. The same person who took a job filing boring documents and treated it like a privilege. The same woman who shows up for my daughter even when it would be easier not to." He squeezed her hand gently. "That's not temporary. That's who you are." Claire blinked back tears. "I don't want to need you. Too late. And for what it's worth, I don't want to need you either, but I do. So we're both screwed." She laughed despite herself, wet and broken. "That's not comforting. It's honest. I hate when you're right. Get used to it." They stood there in the doorway, hands linked, neither quite willing to let go first. Through the house, Claire could hear Sophie singing to herself upstairs, completely oblivious to the adult complications happening below. "I'm not going anywhere," Claire said finally. "Even though I probably should, even though it's messy and undefined and Mrs. Patterson will probably always think I'm a gold digger. She'll get over it." "Will she, though?" "Probably not, but I don't care." "You should care. She runs your life." "She runs my schedule. There's a difference." Claire pulled her hand back, but gently. "I should go. It's late." "I'll drive you." "I can take the bus." "Claire, let me drive you." In the car, they drove in comfortable silence. The city looked different at night, softer somehow, all the hard edges blurred by streetlights and distance. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said as they neared her apartment. "Sure." "The book club. How's that going?" Claire was surprised he remembered. "Good, actually. We're reading historical fiction now. It's nice. Normal." "I'm glad. You need normal." "So do you." "I have normal. I have a daughter who wants a penguin and an assistant who thinks she knows better than I do. Doesn't get more normal than that." Claire smiled. "Fair point." He pulled up outside her building, but didn't unlock the doors yet. "I know I'm asking a lot, asking you to exist in this undefined space while we both figure out what we're doing. But I need you to know it's not because I don't care. It's because I care too much to rush it and mess it up." "I know." "Do you?" "Yeah, I do." "Okay, good." Claire climbed out, then leaned back through the open door. "Ethan?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for not giving up on me when I get scared. Thank you for not actually disappearing when you threatened to." "Deal." She closed the door and watched him drive away, then climbed the stairs to her apartment. Inside, she sat on the teal couch and thought about need and fear and how sometimes the bravest thing you could do was stay visible even when every instinct screamed to hide. Her phone buzzed. Text from Sophie. "Daddy says you're staying. I'm glad. Also, can we please get a dog? I asked for your help convincing him." Claire laughed and typed back, "We'll see. No promises." "That's what Daddy always says, and it means no." "Then I guess we're more alike than I thought." "Does that mean you're staying forever?" Claire stared at the question for a long moment, then typed, "I'm staying. The forever part we'll figure out as we go." "Good enough. Good night, Claire. I love you." The words appeared so casually, like Sophie hadn't just cracked Claire's heart wide open. She sat there, phone in hand, feeling the weight of those 3 words. Finally, she typed back, "I love you too, sweetheart. Sleep well." And for the first time since moving into her apartment, Claire went to bed and slept through the night without waking once. Spring arrived in fits and starts, snow giving way to rain, giving way to tentative sunshine that never quite committed to warmth. Claire watched the city transform from her apartment window, thinking about how much had changed since that frozen December night at the bus stop. She had a routine now: wake up at 6, coffee in the kitchenette, bus to the foundation, 8 hours of work. Margaret had increased her to full-time in March, saying the archive project needed dedicated attention. Lunch with coworkers who'd stopped treating her like a curiosity and started treating her like a friend. Home by 5. Book club on Wednesdays. Dinners at the mansion on Thursdays and usually Sundays too. A life. An actual functioning life. But something was shifting. Claire felt it in the way Ethan looked at her sometimes, in the careful distance Sophie no longer maintained, in the fact that her toothbrush had somehow ended up in the mansion's guest bathroom and nobody had questioned it. They were becoming something. She just didn't know what to call it. It was a Sunday in late April when everything finally came to a head. Claire had spent the afternoon at the mansion helping Sophie with a school project about family trees. They'd spread out on the living room floor, construction paper and markers everywhere, while Ethan worked in his office with the door open. "I need to put Mommy on here," Sophie said quietly, her marker hovering over the paper. "Right? Of course. But it makes me sad." Claire set down her own marker. "That's okay. You're allowed to be sad about your mom. Daddy says I should remember the happy things." "Your dad's right. But you can remember happy things and still be sad she's gone. Both things can be true." Sophie considered this, then carefully wrote Anna Cole on a branch of the tree, decorating the letters with small flowers. "Do you think she would have liked you?" The question caught Claire off guard. "I don't know. I hope so. I think she would have. Daddy talks about her sometimes, about how she always wanted to help people. You help people." "I'm trying to." "You helped us." Sophie looked up from her project, expression serious beyond her years. "We were really sad before you came. The house was quiet all the time, Daddy worked, and I pretended everything was okay and nobody was actually happy. And now? Now Daddy smiles more, real smiles, and the house doesn't feel so empty." Sophie returned to her drawing. "I asked Daddy if you could live here for real, like forever." Claire's heart stuttered. "You did?" "Yeah, he said it was complicated, but I don't think it is. You have a room you stay in sometimes. Your toothbrush is already here. You could just stay." "Sophie, it's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because nothing was ever that simple. Because Claire was still terrified of needing people too much. Because she'd worked so hard to build her own life and moving into Ethan's mansion felt like surrendering that independence. Because sometimes people need their own space," Claire said carefully, "even when they care about each other." "Do you care about Daddy?" The question was so direct, so innocent, that Claire couldn't deflect it. "Yes, I care about your dad." "Like love care? Or like friend care?" "Sophie, Claire," Ethan's voice came from the office doorway. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" He'd clearly heard some of that conversation. Claire stood, following him into the office, while Sophie returned to her family tree with intense concentration. Ethan closed the door gently. "I'm sorry. She's been asking about you a lot lately, about what you are to us." "What did you tell her?" "That you're important, that you're family." He paused. "Was that wrong?" "No, it's just family is a big word." "I know, but I don't know what else to call it." Ethan leaned against his desk, looking exhausted. "You're here all the time. Sophie asks about you when you're not here. I think about you when I should be working. My assistant has stopped making passive-aggressive comments because she finally accepted you're not going anywhere. At what point do we stop pretending this is casual?" Claire's stomach twisted. "What are you asking?" "I don't know. Maybe I'm asking what you want, because I know what I want and it terrifies me, and I've been avoiding saying it because I don't want to scare you away." "You're not making sense." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I'm saying I think about you constantly. I'm saying Sophie's been drawing pictures of the three of us as a family. I'm saying this house feels empty when you're not in it, and I don't want to keep pretending that's normal friendship behavior." The room felt too small suddenly. "Ethan, I'm not asking you to move in. I'm not even asking you to define this. I just need to know if you feel it too. This thing between us that's more than gratitude or friendship or whatever we've been calling it." Claire looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd stopped his car because his daughter offered cookies to a stranger, who'd given her a job and furniture and a place at his table without expecting anything in return, who looked at her like she was brave instead of broken. "I'm scared," she said quietly. "Of what?" "Of losing myself again. I spent months being invisible, and then I spent months being defined by your generosity. I finally feel like I'm becoming my own person, and I'm terrified that if I let this be more than it is, I'll disappear into being just Sophie's caretaker, or your—" She stopped, searching for the right word. "My what?" "Your second chance. Your way of moving on from Anna. The consolation prize. Ethan's face went pale. Is that really what you think? That you're a consolation prize? I don't know what I think. I just know I was homeless 6 months ago, and now I'm standing in a billionaire's office having a conversation about feelings, and it doesn't feel real. It's real, Claire. This is real. How do you know? How do you know this isn't just, I don't know, gratitude on my part and savior complex on yours? Because I've spent 18 months feeling nothing but grief. And then you walked into my life and suddenly I remembered what hope feels like. That's not a savior complex. That's just... He stopped, jaw tight. That's just what happened. Claire's eyes burned. I can't be what you need me to be. I'm not asking you to be anything except yourself. But what if myself isn't enough? What if I'm still that broken woman from the bus stop underneath all this? Then you're still that woman who survived something most people couldn't, who rebuilt her life from nothing, who shows up for people even when it's hard. Ethan stepped closer. You keep talking about yourself like you're damaged goods, but I look at you and I see the strongest person I've ever met. You didn't know your wife very well then. Don't. His voice was sharp. Don't compare yourself to Anna. She was extraordinary in her own way. So are you. Different people, different strengths, both important. I didn't mean, I know. But you need to stop measuring yourself against some impossible standard of what you think you should be. You're already enough, Claire. You've always been enough. The words cracked something open in Claire's chest. She sank into one of the office chairs, suddenly unable to stand. I love your daughter, she said quietly. And I think I'm falling in love with you. And that terrifies me because I don't know how to need people without losing myself. Ethan knelt in front of her chair, taking her hands. Then we figure it out together. You keep your apartment, your job, your book club, and your Wednesday nights, and whatever else makes you feel like yourself. And we see where this goes. No pressure, no expectations. Just honest. What if it doesn't work? What if it does? Claire looked at their joined hands, his larger ones warm around hers. Sophie's going to have opinions. Sophie already has opinions. She asked me last week if she should start calling you Mom. What did you tell her? That she should call you whatever feels right, and that labels matter less than love. That's very evolved parenting. I have my moments. Claire laughed, wet and broken. This is insane. You know that, right? 6 months ago I was homeless. Now I'm, what, your girlfriend? Sophie's stepmother in training? How about we start with person I'm dating and see where it goes? You want to date me? Claire, I've wanted to date you since you ate pancakes at that diner like they were the best thing you'd ever tasted. I just didn't think I was allowed to want that yet. Because of Anna? Because of grief? Because of guilt? Because I thought wanting something new meant betraying what I lost. Ethan squeezed her hands gently. But Anna wouldn't want me to be alone forever. She'd want Sophie to be happy. And somehow, impossibly, you make us both happy. I don't know how to do this. How to be in a relationship. How to be a whatever I am to Sophie. Neither do I. We'll figure it out as we go. That's not very reassuring. It's honest. Claire pulled her hands back, wiped her eyes. Okay? Okay, what? Okay, let's try. Let's see where this goes. But I'm keeping my apartment and my Wednesday book clubs and my independence. I wouldn't want it any other way. And we tell Sophie together, so she understands this isn't, I'm not trying to replace her mom. She knows that already, but yes, together. They stood simultaneously, and then Ethan pulled Claire into a hug. She stiffened for half a second before relaxing into it, letting herself be held. It felt strange and right and terrifying. We should probably go tell her before she bursts in here demanding answers, Ethan murmured against her hair. Probably. But neither of them moved for another minute. Sophie looked up when they emerged from the office, her expression carefully neutral in the way that meant she'd definitely been listening at the door. Are you guys done talking about feelings? She asked. For now, Ethan said. Good. Can Claire stay for dinner? Claire's going to stay for a lot of dinners, Ethan said carefully. We're trying something, the three of us together, but Claire's still going to have her own apartment and her own life. She's just going to be part of ours more officially now. Sophie tilted her head, processing. So you're dating? Yes. Does that mean Claire's my stepmom? Not yet. Maybe someday, if that's what everyone wants. I want it. Sophie looked at Claire. Do you want it? Claire knelt down to Sophie's level. I want to be in your life, however that looks. But I'm not trying to replace your mom. Your mom was special, and she'll always be your mom. I know that, but you're special too. Sophie threw her arms around Claire's neck. Can we get a dog now, since we're a family? Ethan laughed. We're not getting a dog just because I have a girlfriend. But it would make the family complete. Nice try. They ordered Thai food for dinner and ate on the living room floor, Sophie's family tree project spread around them. Claire noticed Sophie had added her name to the tree, connected to both Ethan and Sophie, with carefully drawn lines. When did you add me? Claire asked. Last week, I was manifesting. Sophie grinned. Daddy says manifesting isn't real, but I think it is because here you are. That's not how manifestation works, Ethan said. Prove it. After dinner, Sophie fell asleep on the couch during a movie, exhausted from the emotional afternoon. Ethan carried her up to bed while Claire cleaned up the living room, gathering markers and construction paper. When he came back down, they sat together on the couch, not quite touching but close enough to feel each other's warmth. This is strange, Claire said. Good strange or bad strange? Still deciding. Fair. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights through the massive windows. Claire thought about the distance between that frozen bus stop and this warm couch, between survival and living, between being invisible and being seen. Can I tell you something? She said quietly. Always. That night, Sophie gave me the cookies. I'd already decided it was my last night. I was going to walk to the bridge after the bus stop. End it. I couldn't see any way forward anymore. Ethan went very still beside her. Claire. But then this little girl appeared with warm cookies and wouldn't take no for an answer, and you stopped the car, even though you probably wanted to just keep driving, and somehow that was enough to make me try one more day. She looked at him. I need you to know that you and Sophie didn't just help me. You saved my life. You saved your own life. We just witnessed it. Maybe, but I couldn't have done it alone. Nobody can. That's not weakness. That's just being human. Claire leaned her head on his shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around her. They stayed like that until Claire's phone alarm went off, her reminder that the last bus to her neighborhood left in 20 minutes. Stay, Ethan said. The guest room is made up. I should go home. Work tomorrow. You have clothes here, toothbrush, everything you need. Claire hesitated, then realized he was right. Somehow, over the past months, she'd accumulated enough belongings at the mansion that staying over wasn't the logistical challenge it should have been. Okay, I'll stay. Yeah? Yeah. That night, Claire lay in the guest room, the same one she'd stayed in that very first night, and thought about how much had changed. The room felt familiar now instead of foreign. The house felt like somewhere she belonged instead of somewhere she was visiting. Sleep came easier than it had in months. The next few weeks were an adjustment. Claire and Ethan navigated the awkward early stages of actually dating, deciding when to hold hands in front of Sophie, negotiating how much time Claire should spend at the mansion versus her apartment, figuring out how to be a couple while also being co-parents to a 7-year-old with strong opinions. It wasn't smooth. There were moments when Claire panicked and pulled away, convinced she was becoming too dependent. Moments when Ethan withdrew into work, old grief patterns resurfacing. Moments when Sophie got jealous of their attention on each other instead of on her, but they kept showing up, kept being honest, kept trying. Margaret noticed the change immediately. You're different, she said one day at work. Good different or bad different? Happy different. It looks good on you. I'm dating Ethan. I figured. The whole office has a betting pool on when you'd make it official. Claire's jaw dropped. What? Don't worry, I won, predicted end of April. Margaret grinned. Used my winnings to buy you a congratulations lunch. Come on. Over sandwiches, Margaret asked the question Claire had been avoiding. Are you happy? I think so. It's scary, but good scary. You're allowed to have good things, you know. You've earned them. Have I, though? I didn't do anything special. I just survived. Survival is special, Claire. Most people in your situation don't make it out. You did. You built a whole life from nothing. That's extraordinary. Claire picked at her sandwich. Sometimes I still feel like that woman at the bus stop, like this is all temporary, and I'm going to wake up back there. That's trauma. It'll get quieter, but it probably won't ever go away completely. You just learn to recognize it as old fear instead of current reality. Is that what you did? Learn to recognize it? Margaret was quiet for a moment. I was homeless too, about 15 years ago. Different circumstances, same outcome. Lived in my car for 8 months before I got back on my feet. Claire stared at her. I didn't know. Most people don't. It's not exactly something I advertise. Margaret met her eyes. But I wanted you to know that I understand, and that it does get better. The fear gets quieter. The shame fades. You start to trust that the good things in your life are real. How long did it take? A couple years before I stopped waiting for everything to collapse. But everyone's different. She paused. The fact that you're asking means you're already doing the work. That's more than most people manage. That conversation stayed with Claire for days. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear from someone who'd been there, that the fear was normal, that it would fade, that she wasn't broken for still being scared 6 months later. She told Ethan about it that weekend, lying in bed in the guest room that was slowly becoming her room. Margaret was homeless, he said, surprised. For 8 months. She didn't say why, but yeah. I had no idea. I've worked with her for 5 years. Because she didn't want you to know. Same reason I don't go around advertising it. Claire rolled onto her side to face him. But it made me think about what I want people to know about me, about what defines me. What did you decide? That I don't want to be the homeless woman who got rescued. I want to be the person who survived and rebuilt and helped a grieving family heal. Both things happen, but I get to choose which one matters more. Ethan brushed hair back from her face. For what it's worth, I've never seen you as someone who needed rescuing. I've always seen you as someone who was already saving herself. I just got to be part of the story. That's a nice revision of history. It's the truth. You took the job, found the apartment, built your own life. All I did was open a few doors. You're the one who walked through them. Claire kissed him, slow and soft. When she pulled back, she whispered, I love you. I don't think I've said it out loud yet. You haven't, but I knew. How? Because you're here. Because you stayed even when it was scary. Because you let Sophie and me matter to you. He kissed her forehead. I love you too, in case that wasn't obvious. It wasn't. You're very subtle. I try. They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time Claire didn't wake up in a panic at 3 a.m. checking to make sure it was all real. May arrived with actual warmth and the kind of sunshine that felt like a promise. Sophie's end-of-year recital came and went. She played a Mozart piece without a single mistake and demanded ice cream afterward to celebrate. Book club finished a particularly difficult novel that left everyone crying. The archive project at the foundation entered its final phase, and Margaret started talking about making Claire's position permanent with benefits. Everything was falling into place in a way that should have terrified Claire, but somehow didn't anymore. It was a Saturday in mid-May when Ethan asked the question that changed everything. They were in the kitchen making breakfast, pancakes for Sophie, coffee for the adults, when he said casually, "What would you think about moving in, officially?" Claire almost dropped the spatula. "What? You're here 5 nights a week anyway. You have a whole drawer in the dresser upstairs. Your favorite mug is in the cabinet. Sophie asks why you have to leave every time you go back to your apartment." He flipped a pancake. "It seems inefficient to keep paying rent on a place you barely use." "I use it plenty." "For what?" "For..." Claire stopped. When was the last time she'd actually slept there? 2 weeks ago? 3? "For independence. You can be independent here. Keep working, keep book club, keep whatever else makes you feel like yourself. But come home here instead of to an empty studio apartment." "Home," Claire repeated. "Yeah, home. If you want it to be." Claire looked around the kitchen. Bright and warm, Sophie's drawings on the refrigerator, evidence of life everywhere. Then she thought about her apartment, the teal couch, the small table, the quiet that had once felt like freedom and now just felt lonely. "Can I think about it?" Of course. No pressure. But there was pressure, Claire realized. Not from Ethan, but from herself. Because she wanted this. Wanted to wake up here every morning. Wanted to be part of Sophie's daily routine instead of a weekend visitor. Wanted to stop pretending she didn't already think of this as home. She was just scared of admitting it. That afternoon, Claire went to her apartment alone. stood in the center of the studio and tried to remember what it felt like when this space had represented freedom and independence. The couch was still beautiful, the lamp still cast warm light, but the space felt hollow now, like a stage set for a life she wasn't living anymore. Her phone buzzed. Text from Sophie. "Are you coming back for dinner? We're making tacos and I need your help because Daddy's taco assembly skills are questionable." Claire smiled. Then she looked around her apartment one more time. She'd needed this place, needed to prove she could take care of herself, could exist independently, could build a life on her own terms. And she had. This apartment had been part of that journey. But maybe the next part of the journey was learning that independence didn't mean isolation, that letting people in wasn't the same as losing yourself, that home could be a place you chose instead of a place you had to earn. She texted back, "I'll be there. Tell your dad I'm bringing proper taco seasoning because his spice tolerance is embarrassing." Then she called her landlord and gave 30 days notice. Moving out was easier than moving in had been. Claire didn't have much. The furniture was all Anna's, headed back to the mansion where it belonged. Just clothes and books and small personal items accumulated over 6 months. On her last night in the apartment, she sat on the teal couch one final time and wrote a letter to her past self, the woman who'd sat at that bus stop believing she was out of options. "Dear Claire, I know you don't believe this yet, but you're going to be okay. Better than okay. That little girl offering cookies isn't just being kind. She's giving you a second chance at life. Take it. You're going to be scared. You're going to doubt yourself constantly. You're going to want to run every time things start to feel real. Don't. Stay. Let people see you. Let them help. It's not weakness. It's how humans survive. You're going to fall in love with a billionaire, which sounds insane when I write it down, but he's not going to make you feel small or indebted. He's going to see you as an equal, as someone strong, as someone worthy of love. Believe him when he says it. You're going to become a mother figure to a 7-year-old who will teach you more about resilience than you ever taught her. Let her in. She needs you, but you need her too. And most importantly, you're going to learn that the worst thing that ever happened to you doesn't have to define you. You're not the homeless woman from the bus stop. You're the survivor who built a life from nothing. You're the person who chose to stay visible. That woman you're becoming, she's extraordinary. And she's been inside you all along, just waiting for permission to exist. You're going to be okay. Love, Claire. She folded the letter, tucked it into a book she'd keep forever, and locked the apartment door one last time. The mansion felt different when she arrived with all her belongings. Not like visiting anymore, like coming home. Sophie helped her unpack, chattering about how they could redecorate the bedroom now that it was officially Claire's. Ethan watched from the doorway, expression soft and unguarded. "You okay?" he asked after Sophie ran downstairs to get more hangers. "Yeah, I'm okay." "You sure? Because you can change your mind. We can extend your lease." "Ethan." Claire crossed the room, took his hands. "I'm sure. This is what I want. You and Sophie, and this house, and this life. I'm choosing it." "Okay, good. Besides, someone needs to teach Sophie proper taco assembly technique." "My taco assembly is fine." "It's really not." He pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. "Welcome home, Claire." "Thanks for letting me in." That night, after Sophie was asleep and the house was quiet, Claire stood at the window looking out at the city lights. The same view she'd admired dozens of times before, but different now. This was her view, her home, her life. Ethan appeared beside her, 2 glasses of wine in hand. "What you thinking about?" That night at the bus stop. How impossible all of this would have seemed. Impossible good or impossible bad? Just impossible. 6 months ago I had nothing. Now I have everything. Not everything. You still don't have a dog. Claire laughed. Sophie's never going to let that go, is she? Absolutely not. I give us until Christmas before I crack. They stood in comfortable silence, shoulders touching, watching their city breathe below them. Can I tell you something? Ethan said quietly. Always. Anna used to say that love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone who made you want to be better, someone who saw your worst parts and chose you anyway. Claire's throat tightened. She sounds like she was smart. She was. And she was right. You make me want to be better, not because I'm trying to impress you or prove something, Just because you exist in my life, and that makes me want to show up fully. I'm not perfect either. I know. That's what makes it real. He turned to face her. I spent 18 months thinking I'd used up my chance at happiness. That Anna was it, and everything after would just be surviving. But then you showed up and reminded me that life keeps happening whether we're ready or not. That we get to choose whether we hide from it or show up for it. Which did you choose? I chose you. I chose us. I chose showing up. Claire kissed him, tasting wine and promise and second chances. When she pulled back, she whispered, I chose this too. All of it. You and Sophie and this big empty mansion that's not empty anymore. It never was. We just needed you to show us. Upstairs, Sophie called out, Claire, are you staying forever now? They looked at each other and laughed. Yes, Claire called back. I'm staying. Good. Can we get a dog? Ask me again at Christmas. I'm manifesting. Manifestation isn't real, Ethan yelled. Prove it. Claire climbed the stairs to Sophie's room, Ethan following behind. They sat on either side of Sophie's bed, and she looked between them with sleepy satisfaction. We're a real family now, right? Sophie asked. We've been a real family for a while, Claire said. We just made it official. Does that mean I can call you Mom? Claire's breath caught. She looked at Ethan, who nodded slightly. If that's what you want, Claire said carefully. But your mom, Anna, she'll always be your mom too. I'm not replacing her. I know, but I can have two moms, right? One in heaven and one here? Yes, sweetheart. You can have two moms. Sophie smiled, satisfied. Okay. Good night, Mom. Good night, Dad. Good night, Sophie, they said in unison. They left her door cracked, the hallway nightlight casting soft shadows. Downstairs, Claire poured more wine, and they settled onto the couch. The expensive one, not the teal one from Anna's storage, which now lived in Claire's office at the foundation. You okay with that? Ethan asked. The mom thing? Terrified, but yes. Me too. Terrified, but yes. We're a disaster. We're figuring it out. Same thing. They sat in the quiet of their home because it was theirs now, all three of them together. And Claire thought about the distance between survival and living. About how sometimes the bravest thing you could do was accept help. About how family wasn't always blood. Sometimes it was cookies offered in the snow and doors held open and second chances given without expectation. She thought about the woman at the bus stop who'd believed she was out of options and wished she could go back and tell her everything was going to be okay. Better than okay. But maybe she didn't need to go back. Maybe that woman was still inside her, just surrounded now by warmth and love and the sound of Sophie singing herself to sleep upstairs. Maybe you didn't have to forget where you came from to appreciate where you ended up. Thank you, Claire said quietly. For what? For stopping the car. For seeing me when I was invisible. For letting me be part of this. Thank you for taking Sophie's cookies, for staying visible, for choosing us. Best decision I ever made. Second best, Ethan corrected. First was surviving long enough to make it. He was right, and Claire was finally starting to believe it. Outside, the city continued its endless movement. People coming and going, building lives, falling apart, putting themselves back together. The same city that had watched Claire freeze at that bus stop now watched her sit in a warm mansion, wine in hand, loved and safe and home. Not because anyone had rescued her, because she'd rescued herself. And then she'd let other people love her anyway. That was the real miracle. Not the billionaire or the mansion or the fact that she'd survived homelessness. The miracle was learning that accepting help didn't make you weak, that letting people in didn't mean losing yourself, that sometimes the strongest thing you could do was admit you couldn't do it alone. Sophie had seen her that December night, really seen her, and offered cookies without judgment or expectation. That single act of kindness had reminded Claire she was still human, still worthy, still here. And now here she was, still human, still worthy, still here, but no longer alone. Ethan's hand found hers on the couch, fingers intertwining. Through the house, they could hear Sophie's music box playing, a gentle melody Anna had probably wound up 1,000 times before. Old love and new love existing in the same space, grief and joy sharing the same rooms, past and present and future all tangled together into something messy and imperfect and real. Claire squeezed Ethan's hand and he squeezed back. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Claire felt the quiet certainty of being exactly where she belonged. Home.